Welcome everyone to episode 4 of Mark Out of 10, the wrestling podcast where we talk, argue and justify our top 10 in a selection of wrestling topics, where opinions mean everything and nothing at the same time. Today's podcast we're talking through the top 10 women in wrestling. But first, I'm the Scottish sweetheart, the podcast principal Shields, and my co-host, the true originator of Stratisfaction Guaranteed, the pappy to Ripley's mammy, the housewife's favourite heel, Hoxie. How we doing, Hoxie?
You said you were going to keep that one quiet. That's amazing. That is absolutely brilliant. I'm very well, mate. How are you? How are you doing?
Not too
How's
bad,
it going?
mate. Not too bad.
That's popped me big time.
I aim to please.
I'm going to be corpsing already. I've only been here.
That's so
30
good.
seconds. My cheeks are hurting.
That's
good shit.
Good shit. Good shit. Yes, guys, episode 4 of Mark Out of 10. So we are officially better than most podcasts because a lot of podcasts finish at episode 3. So we're at episode 4. So it doesn't matter what we do now. The only way is up.
What was the stat? You gave me the stat the other day. I'm trying to think what the stat was. It 40% of podcasts after this time?
Something like
3
that, yeah. So I think we're in
60?
I think we're in 60% of podcasts because 40% of them don't go past episode 3. So yeah,
there you go.
Kudos to us, Hoxie. Kudos to us. I mean, we do talk shit, and there's a lot of shit we can talk about. So we're all good. It's always going to be a good thing.
It, mate. Exactly. Like I said, all we're doing now is doing what we would probably be doing anywhere, just recording it and maybe putting a little bit more structure to it. But we do this shit anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, like I said, if we're not WhatsApping each other or chatting on stream at Hawk7, at Human Shields, Twitter, all that sort of stuff, yeah, or just chatting on Discord or whatever, we'd be doing this anyway. So you might as well put it into the annals of time, as you say, and let other people listen and agree or disagree.
That's it, 100%, because that's what wrestling's all about, right?
Yeah, boy.
So once again, guys, a massive thank you to everybody who takes the time to listen to these podcasts. I mean, they're quite substantial, right? It's somewhere between like 2 and 2.5 hours. We do hope you enjoy listening to them as much as we enjoy making them, because it is actually like it's like a highlight of my week. I look forward to it, especially like doing the little introductions for Hoxie. I think about that more than I think about my list sometimes. As I say, if you do enjoy the podcast, make sure you do share it to someone else. Spread the love. It's all about spreading the love, people. Okay. Stuff like the 5-star ratings, likes and subs on YouTube, they're always appreciated. And as I say, if you want to comment and feedback at all, wrestlemark10@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at mark_out of10 as well. We always want to hear it. We've had loads of different people, especially on YouTube. There was like 3 or 4 people gave their lists on YouTube. I'm not going to go through their lists, but if you want to see other people's lists, then please go into our YouTube channel and check out some of them. Also, what I want to do is I want to actually ask the audience for a bit of help here. So I'll peek behind the curtain of Mark Out of 10. Hoxie and I, we record this podcast through like Discord via OBS. Basically, I record it from one end. It's probably not the most optimal. In fact, it's definitely not the most optimal way of doing it.
No.
So
I think we realised that after listening back to last week's episode, where for some reason I just kept dropping in and out, which was very frustrating. Very frustrating. So I'm sorry about that, guys.
No, it's fine.
But
I
was
my best
not
to get it.
downloading any manga porn at the time. I promise you.
It's already downloaded.
I was already downloaded. Exactly. Yeah.
So basically, if there are any like audio or tech gurus out there, please help us out. Give us suggestions how to make it a bit more optimal. That would be greatly appreciated. And also, Hoxie, I'm trying to get the video recording thing sorted as well. It may take a few episodes, but we'll get there eventually, and people will see our lovely faces, and it means we'll actually need to scrub up a little bit when we're.
Oh God, I might need to have like a shave or a trim or something just to make myself look semi-presentable.
You're a beautiful individual, Hoxie. It's fine. Right. So before we get fired into the women of wrestling, we can't say that, can I? We can't get fired in. Before we start discussing the top 10 women of wrestling.
Quick, go. Timestamp. Shit. What?
Shit. Yeah. So as ever,
5 minutes. We made it 5 minutes. It's ridiculous.
Oh no! This could be the last episode. We made it in the 60%. Not going to get to episode 5. But as ever on Mark Out of 10, we usually do a bit of wrestling news in the industry just now, and I selected it this week because I think it's quite important, and I think it's quite relevant just now because we do have a brand new WWE US champion. The Maverick Logan Paul defeating the Hall of Famer Rey Mysterio in Saudi Arabia. What's your thoughts there, Hoxie?
I think it's absolutely brilliant. I think it's a great thing. We've touched on this a couple of times in passing, haven't we? When we were chatting about this in the last couple of episodes, where Logan Paul is like one of the best people like ever to just pick it up.
Unbelievable.
Literally just like that. He's amazing. He's built for this stuff.
Yeah.
I know he's making billions and billions of dollars doing whatever else he wants to do, but it's just unbelievable how good this kid is. It fascinates me. I love, like we know, we obviously explained, I am a wrestler. I've been doing this for nearly 14 years, maybe even 14 years now. And I've trained pro wrestlers. I'm a coach, a pro wrestling trainer for about 6 of those years. And I deal with people every day of different abilities and different sort of skill sets or whatever. Obviously I'm not comparing myself to this level, but I've never seen anybody like it. The guy's incredible. He's incredible. The matches he's had, like the spots, obviously he's done with Ricochet. The match he had with Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. The match he had with Reigns. Like, if you're the boss of WWE, you've got your champ. Like, he is the guy right now. He's had the title forever and a day. I can't remember. Like, he could have wrestled anybody, and he would have been involved in that conversation, no doubt about it. They were like, okay, well, it's Saudi Arabia show. Who do you want to wrestle? What should we do? Blah, 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 blah. And Logan Paul got the nod for that. That's a big thing. Even, I would say that's probably bigger than him winning this championship. It is to get that nod, to have that match, that main event sort of match with Roman Reigns.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I think it's a great thing. It just goes to show what they have in him.
Yep.
It goes to show what respect the boys and the guys have with what he's done, the ability he has, and what he's actually put into this as well. Because I guarantee there is nowhere in hell Rey Mysterio would have agreed to dropping the belt to him if he was like I don't know, if it was somebody like fucking. I'm trying to think, like Vince Russo or some shit like happened in the past or whatever. There's no way Rey Mysterio is going to drop a title to a bum. You know what I mean? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I haven't watched the match. I haven't had a chance to watch the pay-per-view yet, which is it's rubbish. I've heard mixed reviews. I'll put it that way. But that's one of the matches that I wanted to watch 100%. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but from what I've heard and like little snippets that I've seen, it was decent. And I said, Logan can go, man. He can go, right? It's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, food for thought. What we could do is we could make that Saudi show as something that we do our first sort of, not watch along, but we could do our first like mark out of 10 pay-per-view edition where we go through it.
Yeah, that works for me.
And what that could be like an additional bonus episode or something like that. We'll talk about that offline. But in terms of the Logan Paul thing, I think it's a phenomenal thing that's happened. You know, he's had 5 matches, and every single one of those matches he gets better and better and better. You know, the tag match with Miz against Ray and Dominic, you know, solid match for his first one. I think the stage and
he was the standout in that match.
100%.
He was the standout in that match. Yep.
The occasion didn't get to him at all, and then it was the singles match against the Miz, and you know, I think Miz gets shit on a lot. You know, I think he's a solid hand. I think he's very underrated. You know, I think a lot of people still think to him as being the guy from reality TV, but he is a veteran. You know, he knows what he's doing in the ring. He's fairly safe. He's a reliable hand, and again, Logan excelled in that arena. Then it went to was it Roman first or was it Seth? Was it Seth first? Regardless, it's Seth and Roman, wasn't it?
Seth and then Roman. Yeah.
Seth match was insane. Roman match was insane. And by all accounts, this match was excellent as well. And I haven't seen the entire match, but I have seen a clip of it. And he legitimately saves Rey Mysterio. There's a
right. Okay. Go on. Sorry.
Again, from a wrestler, you're going to tell me I'm wrong, which is absolutely fine.
Yes.
We haven't even got to the list, and I'm going to be told he's wrong. Now, I do know that his positioning wasn't great. I can see that for myself. But the way he recovered from that, I thought, for a guy that's only had 5 matches, you've got to give him kudos for that, surely. Okay, over to you. Here we go.
Okay, so he should never have ever put Rey in that position in the first place. So, like, if we talk about, I've just been putting him over for the last, 5 minutes. Like, I think he's absolutely phenomenal. But that shows it's probably his greenness more than anything. He should never ever have put Rey in that position. His position, I focus on ring position a lot, and I really stress that the fundamentals of professional wrestling are not necessarily the moves. There's fundamental moves, but there's also ring awareness and ring positioning and knowing where to put yourself to give and take stuff. So that's a really big important part of it. When I've seen that spot, and I saw a lot of people on Twitter, X, whatever, at Mark out of 10, gaming, whatever. Blah, blah, blah. So basically saying like, "Oh, Logan Paul's just saved his life," blah blah blah. Oh, he put his life in danger more than anything by not being in the right spot to catch him.
So was he like a yard too further back, or
he got there? He got there in the end. He got into the position, but he was probably half a step off. Like I said, he needed to get closer. Ray's not going to fuck up. So like his springboard, like off the ropes or whatever, he's not going to short that at all. It was just Logan being half a step off, and for a spot like that, half a step might as well be like 3 miles, if you know what I mean. But he got there. Okay. He got there. But Rey, if you sort of look at Ray's position when Logan catches him, hands down, he had his hands above his head and stuff, he would have been okay. He would have looked shit, but he wouldn't have broke his neck or anything like that. He protected himself on the spot. He managed to get himself right over, if you know what I mean. It was almost like a sort of a moonsault kind of situation. But Logan did get there in the end and caught him just, but he was the one that fucked the spot up. It wasn't Rey. It was Logan not being in the right spot.
See, and that goes to show the experience of being in the ring, as opposed to me who just watches the thing, has never taken a bump in his life.
You've got to get there. You've got to get there for the guy. It's all on you. It's all on the person who's going to catch. It's really important. One of the main reasons why I nearly went off on Ray Orton last week for him being dangerous and stuff is he's one of those guys who sort of protects himself more than he protects the other guys in a lot of the spots. Yeah. There's a couple of instances that I can go to, and being there to catch body is vital. It's massive. If you could, there's lots of images on the internet or slow-mos of spots of like guys doing house show dives or doing fucking whatever, like dives over the rope from the top to the outside. You always look at the other guy on the floor and they've always got their arms up or their arms out ready to catch, and everyone says, "Oh, you can tell it's fake" or whatever. Like, well, yeah, someone's jumping from 20 feet in the air to catch them. You know what I mean? It's the guys who haven't got the arms up, the people you need to worry about. But just as an aside, that's one thing out of lots and lots of things that he's done right.
Yeah.
That's still in him and Reigns, where Reigns is like getting ready to do that uppercut, and Logan Paul's in the air, like 15 feet in the air, coming off the ropes at the Saudi show. That's like somewhere off like Tekken or fucking Mortal Kombat or something. It's an insane spot and an insane image. And I think he's got obviously a long way to go. He's only he's in his late 20s, maybe 30s, something like that.
Yeah. Not even that.
He's got a long way to go if he wants to stick at it. In terms of like an image that's going to be a lasting image, that's going to be the one. It's crazy. Like he's so good. I hate him. Prick.
He's 28.
28 years old.
That's insane, right?
Logan Paul, I hate you, bastard.
So, I mean, what I really like about Logan, right? And I never ever thought I would say that. Like after the few years ago, it's like the thing I really like about Logan Paul, right, is the fact that in wrestling you love like a redemption arc. And I think Logan Paul has went full circle in terms of I don't know if the wrestling audience know about Logan Paul, social media star. He went through a whole lot of shit in terms of we'll just say Japanese forest, and we'll call it that. He went through really a bad period in terms of his social media presence and etc. And I think this is just his growth as a person has actually been really, really cool, and it's that cool redemption arc that we really like. Now, the fact he's a heel is neither here nor there, but I just like that. I think he is a true athlete. You know, it's like Shelton Benjamin vibes in terms of athleticism. I don't know. I don't know why that comes to my head straight away. But I mean, the next question I've got for you is: so what's next for Logan Paul? So he's 5 matches in. He's US champion. Is this
Sky's the limit,
basically
mate.
sky's the limit? Yeah, in terms of how much does he want?
Yeah, how much he wants to do it. I think I genuinely think by the way he's being used and what's gone on, the only people who will be annoyed with him is the guys who are jealous. He has definitely got the respect of the boys, 100%. You can tell by the way everyone works with him and what they do. The sky's the limit. He can do whatever he wants. He literally could do whatever he wants. Whether I see him with a WWE title, I don't know. Could you see him with the WWF Wrestling Heavyweight Championship, the secondary belt? You know what I mean? That the weird one that Seth's got. I don't see him being the undisputed or the big belt boy, but I could see him running something like that if he really wanted to. The guy can go and he'll get himself over. Like he's got natural heel heat with a lot of people, and it's not go away heat. Like he can be a prick, and people will believe it.
It's the social media age, though, right? It's a content creator thing. Okay, it's like he's got a natural ability. He knows how to connect. He knows how to be in front of a camera. And in today's wrestling, that's what's important. He can speak. He can speak better than fucking 90% of the roster. And I'm talking about the roster of wrestling, not just WWE. There's very few that I think could probably beat him on the mic in terms of just being that natural heel heat. But yeah, it's really exciting. I think the ideal thing that could happen, and for me this is sort of a booking hat on, I imagine Gunther vacating the Intercontinental Champion, so he's an undefeated Intercontinental Champion, challenging Seth Rollins for the World Heavyweight title. Logan Paul wins the Intercontinental title, and he's US and Intercontinental title holders at the same time.
I reckon he can do both. It's interesting.
I don't know why. It's a booking thing in my head, because that would elevate Gunther into the world title picture where he should be, because he is phenomenal.
Probably the best right now, I would say.
Yeah, I would say so. It would give Seth Rollins a legitimate contender who could put him out of action so he can recover from the niggling injuries he's got. Like he's got well documented back injuries, and it would give Logan a platform. And I think for me, Intercontinental Champion is probably as high as he would go. I don't think he'll get the big title, but I think he could be a really good Intercontinental Champion. And you know, then you can think of the different feuds he's got there. He could have. I mean, he's still got the Miz. I think Miz is an excellent talent, as I've said before. You can
put the Miz in anywhere at any time. Yeah. He's literally like just a plug-in guy, isn't he? You can do anything he wants at any time.
A Pete Dunne, you've got. I think a Pete Dunne and Logan, I think, could be really, really interesting. I think if
you look at Rick, you could put Ricochet. Yeah,
Nakamura.
That'd be nice. That'd be fun.
That'd be a fun match to have. So yeah, I think Sky.
Chad Gable.
Chad Gable. Fucking hell. That'll be really, really interesting. So that's what's next for Logan. Interestingly enough, what's next for Rey Mysterio? So he's lost the US title. He's already a Hall of Famer. His legacy's cemented in terms of being one of the best ever. Yeah, definitely the best luchador ever, but legitimate one of the best wrestler ever.
Fucking close. Yeah, you know? Yeah.
What's next for him? Is it Is he now on the downward curve in terms of his retirement? Is he going to feud with members of the LWO? What do you foresee?
Well, this is what the WWE do, and for better or for worse, they see that shelf life of they only do it with certain people. And it's always the people that everybody loves most of the time. Like they'll have fucking Goldberg or whatever come back at like 50 something or whatever and win everything under the sun, but they'll shit on a 42-year-old Rey Mysterio or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just think it wouldn't surprise me. So it wouldn't surprise me. Sort of just mills about, does what he needs to do, keep his boy there and keep his boy in the picture and help him out and all that sort of stuff, which is absolutely bang on. Like, it's a commendable thing to do. It's probably where he is now in terms of what he does. But it wouldn't surprise me if, I don't know when his contract's up. Like, I wouldn't even know. Like, but it wouldn't surprise me if he done a run in AEW. Genuinely, like, I know I don't want to shit on AEW. At the same time, I will shit on AEW. Like, I don't want to, but sometimes I feel I have to. It is slowly becoming a little bit of a WCW kind of situation, that WWE light, where everybody goes to sort of goes to the woodshed sort of thing. Like, I know a couple of the guys have got some run, but if you look at all the best stuff in AEW at the minute, it's all ex WWE guys, really. It wouldn't surprise me if he went somewhere like that to have like a last big run. I don't know, but it's one of them. But he's never going to be the guy anymore in the WWE. Yeah. They've got way too many people there, and they've got way too much stuff going on. And he's yesterday's news, if you know what I mean. He isn't for me, but to them he is. Like, the way they would put him over, but. Like, it's Rey Mysterio, mate. He can do whatever the fuck he wants. He could go away, come back 3 months, have a feud with somebody, put them over or whatever. Like, he's a made man, isn't he? He's one of those guys. You can do whatever he wants. They can do whatever they want with him.
He's the Latino cash cow. I mean, until he stops selling merch, they're never getting rid of him.
He's always, till those masks stop going off the shelf, they're gonna. I mean, he's not going anywhere, but he can do what the fuck he wants, mate. He can do whatever he wants, and that's a good position to
Mysterio.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Okay, so that is the news within the wrestling industry today. That's quite a good wee section we've got there, Hawks. That's quite good. I like it.
Yeah, we went quite deep there. We went quite deep. I didn't think we'd spend as much time on that, but you're very good with the questioning, aren't you, Shields? You line them up. I'll try my hardest to knock them down, and we'll get some conversation going. I love it.
I'm going to admit something. I do enjoy this sort of broadcasting thing.
You're very good at it, Shields. You're very good at it.
Cheers, Hoxie.
Very good. Okay. Nobody else will. I will.
That's it. Yeah. All right. Okay. Let's get started with our top 10 then. Best female wrestlers in the business. It could be from today's era to the days gone by. I think there've been. I'm actually quite surprised at the number of women that actually came into. That sounds really bad.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I'm really surprised at the amount of women wrestlers that. I thought my list would have been really hard to fill, but for me, I actually had more and more added. There was like, they've got a legitimate shout. They've got a legitimate shout. So there will be people that I've eliminated that potentially could be on your list that could be a good discussion moving forward. So. There's been a huge number of women that have managed to get themselves over and made a huge name for themselves. It could be women that have managed their way to success as well. You know, all will be revealed in our lists coming up, our top 10 lists. Hoxie, how about you go first this week?
I was going to say you went first last week, didn't you? So I think we'll take it in turns. So I'm in the same boat as you, mate. I thought, like, oh God, I'm going to really struggle with this. As soon as I started like thinking and writing stuff down, they just flew out.
Yep.
And I found myself in not the same situation as I was last week, but I found myself in a position where I was like, shit, I need to get some people off this list that I don't really want.
Yep.
I did want to put Rhea Ripley down here 10 times, but I was doing it 100% for the wrong reasons. I'm going to let you into a little secret. I'm going to go early with this. She didn't make it onto my list at all in anywhere. But I guarantee probably in 5 years' time, she will be number one. But that's by the by. There's no honourable mention there or anything like that. I'm just putting that out the way
she's
straight away.
She's not on my list either.
She's not there yet.
She was close, and I agree with you. It's probably 5 years too early for her.
Oh, she is incredible though. I'm going to give not an honourable mention. I'm just going to give a mention to Rhea Ripley. You keep doing you, hun, and you will be the first lady to transcend wrestling and just be worldwide star. Anyway, my number 10 is Wendy Richter. She is Hall of Famer, AWA, World Wrestling Council champion, WWF champ, obviously, NWA Women's Tag Team champion as well. So she was everywhere. She was in the territories. She was on main event TV. She was in, obviously AWA, all over the place, just doing like mad stuff. She was probably one of the most popular women's wrestlers of all. You've probably got to sort of think about it in that situation. My list is a very varied list for lots and lots of different reasons. It's not like it's not necessarily championships or anything like that. So I found it quite hard to pinpoint my top 10, but she definitely made it into here. She sort of made women's wrestling really in the 80s as sort of like a popular thing.
Made it sexy.
She made it sexy. There we go. So she was the 150 pounds of twisted steel and sex appeal, which I just think is one of the best taglines for any wrestler in history. It's incredible. She obviously had really, really storied championship matches with the Fabulous Moolah. They drew really big ratings. There's a 1984 match which was like a huge rating at the time, massive rating at the time. She was part of that rock and wrestling movement with Cyndi Lauper, which obviously we know just it transformed the wrestling business. It turned it from wrestling halls and smoky rooms with no lights to TV and Muhammad Ali and all this sort of stuff. You know what I mean? It changed the business. She won the title and this is a big thing. We got to think about what women's wrestling was, and we really, to be fair, we've got to think about what women's wrestling is perceived to be now still, as like that sort of, this is where I can go and get my popcorn or get my drink or go to the toilet or whatever. Like, people are still in that mindset. I think that's obviously just a horrendous mindset to be in. I think it's ridiculous. She won the title at WrestleMania 1, the first WrestleMania. You cannot sort of sleep on that as a quite a big thing, quite a big stat, quite a big fact or whatever. I don't know which way you want to put it. To go from women's wrestling was, when you had a poster back in the day, you'd have your wrestling posters or your wrestling programs or whatever. You would have Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, Roddy Piper versus Macho Man, blah, 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 blah. And then you'd have featuring also women and the midgets. Or, you know what I mean? That's what wrestling used to be. Yep. Like, they were an afterthought. They were like it was the circus act. It was like, oh, well, we need to get them on, or if they're going to be there or whatever. For her to win a title, to have a featured match and win a title at the first WrestleMania is a huge thing. It's a huge thing. And like I said, she was one of the most popular wrestlers, women's wrestlers of the 80s, and she made a huge difference. She made a massive difference with women's wrestling. That's still sort of lingering today, really. She was probably one of the first people. I would say she was probably Genesis to the women's wrestling movement in the world back at that 80s. And it just goes to show, we're talking about the 1980s. It's whatever it is, 35, 40 years ago or whatever. That was the genesis of the change, which is still going now. So for me, she had to get on the list. There's better workers, there's other people, there's more personality, there's whatever later on in my list, but I couldn't not have her on my list. So Wendy Richter is my number 10.
Interesting, an interesting starting point. Number 10. She's not on my list. She's one of them I considered, but she was one of the very early ones to go off the list. Yeah,
that's interesting.
And again, it's for no real reason. It's just, again, it's down to connection and how they make you feel. But that's just a sideway. But no, I don't know. There's people on the list that I think, when you think of women's wrestling, probably comes into people's heads faster than Wendy Richter. I don't know. We'll soon see. I mean, a fair shout, like you say, WrestleMania 1. You've got to be, in order to get put over at that event, you know,
you've got to be a big deal.
You've got to be a big deal, 100%.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's really interesting that she hasn't made it on your list, because I think she's. I'm trying to think of the word, and I can't think of the word, and it was on my tongue. Pioneer. Lots of people, she's a pioneer of women's wrestling, or he's a pioneer of wrestling, or whatever. I genuinely think she is like one of the foundational pioneers of the popular of women. Very surprised she's not on your list, John.
I would agree. Yes, right. She was definitely a pioneer, but for me to be a true pioneer, you would need to. If we go back to what you said near the beginning, right? Women's wrestling is the toilet break. That's the mentality for wrestling fans, or some wrestling fans, okay? And now, it's not her fault, okay? But if she was a true pioneer, why... You know what I'm trying to say? Why didn't that attitude disappear, or why did that attitude ever come to fruition in terms of it's the toilet break? Now, there's obviously there are reasons why that happened.
There's way more to it than that.
Yeah.
There's way more to it than Wendy Richter for that.
Yeah,
situation.
100%. It's just I think that's the sort of mental model I've got in my head here. But again, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think, as I say, she was in my wider list. It's just she was taken off. Sharpish.
I understand. Yeah, I understand. I understand where you're coming from. It's fine.
Okay.
We were joking at the start of this, thinking like, are we going to fall out or whatever? Like, we've literally gone one in. We haven't fallen out, but it's like, what? What the hell? Like, you know what I mean? That's quite funny.
Okay, so my number 10 is, I'm going more recent, and it's the Glamazon Beth Phoenix.
Okay,
I think that Beth reinvented what a woman could do within the WWE environment. Okay, you had the likes of your Trish Stratus, you had your likes of your Lita, who brought eyes to the product of women's wrestling. Okay, but what Beth did, she took that proverbial ball and she just ran with it. You know, she was a 3 times WWE Women's Champion. She was a 1-time Divas champ, so 4 times overall. She is a Hall of Famer. She's married to one of the best ever in Edge. Okay, great in-ring talent. She's got memorable bits within women's wrestling in WWE. I mean, Judgment Day. She was in a triple threat match with Melina and Mickie James, and she picked both them up at the same time and did a double torture rack. Now, I don't care who you are. Lifting 2 actual human bodies on your shoulders and doing a torture rack, that's fucking strong, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, I don't even think I couldn't lift like Mickie James and Melina on my shoulders and give them a torture rack. You know, that's what, it's just something that sort of transcends like what you think a women's wrestler is. You know, for all that she was a badass in the ring, she was. You then flip side of the coin, she shows a different side of her personality. She did the comedic stuff with like Santino Marella. You know, she was Glamarella, and like, you know, the backstage bits with John Cena, and like trying not to pop in the background as like Santino is just like John Cena. You know, it's just shit like that. It just shows a different sort of face of Beth Phoenix. And then she obviously went away. She retired. She came back to do commentary in NXT, and her commentary work wasn't great, but it was solid enough. You know, it's an ideal sort of stomping ground for her in terms of, you know, it's a developmental brand in inverted commas. So why shouldn't the commentators develop as well? And I thought she was a solid hand doing the commentary. And then obviously she came back as well. When Edge returned, she came back. She has her second run, and it was just as good as her first. She came back as she just looks like a Viking warrior in that second run, right? Like, just absolute animal. I think great worker, great personality, and from all accounts, apparently she's brilliant backstage. She's like takes time to speak to like the younger talent. She's very approachable, etc. So yeah, for me, I think just again, it all comes down to impact in the business. Easily a top 10 pick, and yeah, so my 10 is Beth Phoenix.
That's interesting, mate, because she didn't even make it on my
Wow.
my fucking tertiary list.
There you
I'll be
go.
honest with you, like I
You
it's gonna
forgot.
sound really bad. I forgot about her, really, to be fair, and that's probably says enough. Like, I get what you're saying. Like, I know she was like a big deal with what she does, and I appreciate her as a worker. She was probably about 10 years of time. I think
Yeah.
if she came around now or whatever 5 years ago or something like that, she'd be a way more bigger deal than she is. She was in that sort of, she was really entrenched in that Divas era, wasn't she? So she helped get a lot of guys over, a lot of guys, quote unquote, a lot of people over, definitely. So it was, yeah, like I don't know, she just didn't. Yeah,
Interesting.
I like her. I like her husband more than I like her, clearly. So yeah, it's one of them.
Oh, so harsh. But again, it is what it is. We all have our opinions. I mean, mine's might be right, yours might be wrong, but that's just by the by. We'll carry on. Okay, so moving on to my number 9 then. We're going old school this time, and I think when you talk about top women's wrestlers, and we touched upon our last. That sounds really wrong. We spoke about our last week in the tag team division, and it's Mae Young. I think when you think of female wrestlers, Mae Young, I think the way I was going through this list is a case of if you spoke to very like family fortunes here, is if you spoke to 100 people of the public and you said to them, name a women's wrestler, I think that Mae Young would come up. She was a 3-time world champion, but it's not championship reigns like you said before. I think her name is synonymous with the world of wrestling, and it always will be. Known as the pioneer, I know you mentioned that with Richter. It's Mae Young is a true pioneer for wrestling. When you first consider when she was originally active, 1939. That's when she
30 odd,
first.
yeah.
It's like that in itself is like up until when she like
Fascinating.
passed away. You've got to say like fair play to you. I mean, you think of Mae Young, you think of like the friendship, especially again. We weren't around, surprisingly, in 1939. We only saw Mae Young in the sort of the twilight of her career, in terms of coming back, the cheap pop, the Dudleys types stuff, friendship with Fabulous Moolah. Again, if you think about our run in the 90s during the Attitude Era, like getting powerbombed through tables, we spoke about that in the tag team episode. If you haven't listened to the tag team episode, last episode, give it a listen.
Go back and listen.
Exactly.
Episode 3.
And just the story of like her saying to Bubba Ray, fucking essentially treat me like one of the boys, like don't pull your punches, just give me it. I mean, granted, there were certain things that she did on Attitude Era TV, like giving birth to a hand, courtesy of like Sexual Chocolate Mark Henry. I mean, that was really bizarre. And bizarre, I mean fucking horrendous, and should never be shown on TV ever again. But again, it's not a nice moment, but it's a memorable moment when you think of Mae Young. And I think, she clearly loved the wrestling business to still be doing it to her age when she did it until she passed away. She had to be on my list. It's probably more of a nostalgia pop for me there. It's just, bless her. She's got to be on the list.
Do you know what, mate? Like, she was a toss-up for me. I'll tell you now, she's not on. She's not on mine.
Okay, fair enough.
She's not here. And it's not through like, oh God, I don't want her on my list or whatever. I just, without giving too much away, there was somebody else that I would put on rather than her, basically.
Okay.
But I can't disagree. I can't disagree with the reasons why you've put her on here. Like, she's genuinely a legend. Like
100%.
A lot of people, like, legend gets batted around quite a lot, doesn't it? Like, oh yeah, you're such a legend or whatever. Like, she really is. The fact my favorite Mae Young story is from she done the Bronco Buster on Eric Bischoff on a Monday Night Raw episode.
Yep.
And as a joke, probably it was Bruce Pritchard and it might have even been Pat Patterson at the time or whatever. They were like, we need to pull a rib on Eric. Like, what can we do? Like, is there anything that you can do or whatever? And she was like, yeah, I'll put some sardines and mackerel and stuff down my trousers and down my pants when I do the Bronco Buster.
No way.
So she's gone out there knowing obviously Eric doesn't have a clue. He has no idea whatsoever. Just takes a champ and he's doing the Bronco Buster on him in the corner with dance. Like, obviously the smell is very strong
Horrendous.
and pungent, and he's just like he no-sold it. Like, even Bruce says, I think it's an interview or whatever, and I think Eric's picked up on it as well. Eric was like, I ain't fucking selling that shit. If I sell that shit, they'll do it again and again. They'll find any reason to do shit to me. And Bruce was like, look, he came back and just, yeah, thanks Mae, like, wicked. See you later, see you next week or whatever. Like, just an amazing story. Yeah, she was bang up for it. Like, she was around for a long time. You know, obviously she was in the business for a long time. She was, and this is not meant disrespectful, she was one of the boys, if you know what I mean. She was banging there. She was right in there with everybody, and she was up for a rib. Like, at that time, she would have been in her 70s easily, probably even like maybe her 80s at the time when she was doing that. And like, yeah, fair play, Mae. You crack on, girl. Brilliant. Yeah, fair dues, Mae. Like I say, she's not on mine, but we're not going to fall out about that. Not at all.
Like I said, the lists could have been totally different as well. Like, as we said in previous podcasts, I think our lists, if we did them tomorrow, they'd probably be slightly different again. So, I mean, yeah, I don't imagine we're going to have much of the same people on the lists, but I don't think our arguments are going to be too visceral. Okay, Hoxie, you're number 9.
My number 9 is Gail Kim. She is quite possibly one of the most underrated women's wrestlers of all time. I've always held her in very, very, very high regard. Obviously, one of the reasons why she made it onto the list. She's 7 times TNA knockout champion.
Yep.
I think she was the first knockout champion as well. So she was the first sort of women's champion in TNA. When she went to the WWE, she won the WWE Women's Championship in her first match.
Yep.
She was like, which is just, when you think about that, what happens within wrestling, what happens within in the WWE, that is huge. It's a phenomenal stat. She single-handedly built the TNA Knockouts division, or at least kept it to a very, very, very high standard around that time with some of the matches she had with like guys like the Beautiful People, like Angelina Love and those sort of guys. Like, they were all right. They were decent, but when they were in the ring with her, it was the next level. She got the best out of every single person that she was in the ring with. She was a phenomenal worker. She started off as in TNA as the America's Most Wanted Valet.
Yep.
And they were a great tag team. Really, really good sort of introduction for her. Really good fun. Really good fun stuff they used to do. And I just want to put a massive, massive sort of poignant star on this. The feud that she had with Awesome Kong in TNA. Everyone who's watched this, I picked up on this last week when I was talking about matches that people should maybe go away and watch, or things that we should go away and sort of look at or read up on or whatever. The feud that she had with Awesome Kong, it should not have, but on paper, when you look at those two people on a piece of paper or a picture of those two people, it should not work. It shouldn't work. But that is probably the best women's wrestling feud in TNA ever. I can't think of anything that would be better than that in terms of work, in terms of story, in terms of results, in terms of longevity. Like, it was so good. It was so good. Gail Kim gets slept on a lot. I think she's an agent now in TNA.
She's still active in TNA. Like, she's still a big proponent of the Knockouts division. Gail Kim is on my list as well later on, by the way. Brilliant. So yeah, I agree with
you. There we go. Yeah. What I'll probably put a button on it there, and then we can probably pick it up a little bit later on if she's going to be on your list. But she had to get there. She had to get on my list. That's not me like trying to squeeze her in at number 9. She was one of the first names on there. She just sort of necessarily got sort of bumped down or whatever. But obviously, when I go through my list, there's reasons why there's people higher. But she's phenomenal. She's phenomenal.
Insane.
She gets stepped on a lot of people. Like I said, you could probably have this conversation with a lot of wrestling fans, and she'll never her name won't get brought up. But when you look at what she did and what she does and like how she did, she was amazing. And she was just like, from all I've seen and all I've heard, she's a sweetheart. Like, she's a good person, and to be that good of a person in wrestling is a good thing. So, and
I'm going to say something that's potentially like it might come across wrong, but she is absolutely beautiful,
stunning. Yeah, she's stunning. She's gorgeous. Yep, gorgeous. Yeah. Like, okay, so that's real talk, Shields. Okay, real talk. Like, I guarantee that when women watch wrestling, they will have a favorite male wrestler because they find them attractive or whatever, or they.
Yeah, of course.
It's the whole package. Like, oh, he's got a good body. He's got a pretty face. Whatever. Like, there's nothing wrong with us appreciating that. So
I agree.
That's not a caveat. Like, we can say that. We can say that. That's fine. It's respectful. It's okay. But I agree. Gail Kim is beautiful. Definitely. But yeah,
we'll pick it up. We'll pick it up later on. We'll talk more about Gail Kim, which we like.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome.
Cool. You're number 8 then, Mr. Hawks.
My number 8 is the fabulous Moolah. Or Moolah, as what the youngs used to say. When we talk, you've probably gone down the May. I don't know if she's going to be on your list or whatever.
She is on my list.
Might have. Okay, so you've sort of. There's many reasons here why Moolah is on my list, quite similar to sort of Mae Young. Really, like she is a legit legend.
Mm-hmm.
She's an 8-time women's championship, like, overall in her career. She was in the title picture, the title sort of feuds or whatever, for about 30 years.
Yeah.
That is longer than everyone's career, really. She was going before that, and she was going after that. So to be in that title picture for that amount of time is just, it's mind-boggling. When you look back, like, we talk about Mae Young earlier on, like, she was in the wrestling business from 1939 till basically probably, 2010?
Yeah.
And she died not long after that. So that's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Fabulous Moolah wasn't really that far behind either. An absolute legend at the time as well. She became the oldest champion in wrestling. She was 76 when she won the women's championship in 1999. So at that time, she was the oldest champion in wrestling history. At 70, she's just amazing. She's the first woman in the WWE Hall of Fame. She got inducted in 1995. She was still active then, like, not necessarily wrestling, but she was still within the business. So she was still an active member of the squad. I know a lot has come out about her lately, and we're pulling the Hulk Hogan rule for this. We had a bit of a chat about this earlier on. We're pulling the Hulk Hogan rule on this, but she trained a lot of women wrestlers for good and for bad. You guys can go and read up. We're not here to chat about that. We're putting people over most of the time. She trained guys as well, like Del Wilkes, who's the Patriot. She trained him. So she had a big impact on the business from that perspective as well. We talk about
Wendy Richter. Wendy Richter was actually trained at one of our schools.
Yeah.
So, sorry to interrupt you.
We'll probably talk about that a little bit later on, the connection there. But she on any greatest women wrestlers list anywhere from anybody, I guarantee she's going to be on that. I would find it very, very interesting if someone had an argument against it. Basically, 100% is one of the women names in wrestling history. What she did, where she went, she was a promoter, she was a trainer, she was a worker, she was a valet, she was a comedy figure, she was a backstage in front of the camera, she done everything, wrestler, champion, whatever. Like, she's been around everywhere and done absolutely everything. So for that reason, Fabulous Moolah, number 8, easy.
Yep.
Easy.
I agree with you, definitely. On any top 10 list, it's just about positioning, right? I mean, again, excuse the phrasing, but yeah, she's got to be in any sort of top 10 list when talking about any women's wrestler. I mean, I'll talk about it more later because she is on my list, as I say, but I mean, when we talked about Bruno Sammartino in episode 1, again, if you haven't heard that episode, listen to episode 1, we talked about his longevity, and that's why he should be on the list, and it's exactly the same with Moolah for me. It's a case of the length of time. I mean, she was recognised, she was NWA champion, and then obviously WWF bought the rights to NWA, and then she was recognised up until like 1984 or something ridiculous. It's like 10,000 plus days officially recognised as champ.
The longest time ever. Mental. It's crazy.
You know, so if Bruno gets on the list for it, Moolah's got to be there. So yeah, absolute fair shout, Hoxie. Number 8, the fabulous Moolah. Okay, heading on to my number 8. We're going a bit more modern again. We're going to Lita. You know, ooh. What was that noise? Lita. So if you go from like the beginning for her, she debuted in WWF. She was one of the hoes of the Godfather's Hoe Train. You know, then she went back to developmental, then she came back up and she was paired with S.A. Rios, who, you know, the storyline there was
I loved S.A. Rios, by the way. I'm just going to throw that in there real. I loved him when I started watching wrestling. He was like
Sunday Night Heat on Channel 4.
Guys. He was amazing with his big red head, like, flying around everywhere. Sorry.
So good. No, it's absolutely fine.
And then just aside, yeah.
Then obviously the turn from S.A. Rios, powerbomb and Lita. She was saved by the Hardy Boys. She formed Team Extreme, and then she became possibly one of the most recognised women in wrestling. You know, I think it goes without saying, Lita, if you think of wrestling, Lita is definitely going to be in the conversation as well. 4-time women's champion, a 1-time tag team champion, and she's got a legacy that's going to be remembered forever. She had a serious neck injury. You know, she was off for about a year, and then she came back to feud with Trish Stratus, a feud that's still talked about to this day. You know, first woman to like sort of main event Monday Night Raw. You know, and those two were, you know, it's that phrase lightning in a bottle, and I think with Lita and Trish for the women's division doesn't get said a lot for the women's division, but I think those two, the feud, the real sort of feud that they had, was that lightning in the bottle. It wasn't to the same extent as like Stone Cold and Rock, for example, but I think on a very lesser scale, they just worked, they clicked together. Then you think about memorable moments or memorable times within the business. Then you've got the whole Edge and Matt Hardy affair. You know, how did they use that real life? You know, she embraced the slut moniker. You know, that you know, like, all joking aside, and she's one that says that.
Might be a slight understatement.
You know,
like the embracing of that, yeah.
She embraced it. You know, she played to that gimmick because, again, I think she's still well respected in the backstage. It's just, you know, she's been involved in so many things in modern day women's wrestling. I think she is the high risk taking woman of a generation. You know, it's like, if you think about what she did in even the TLCs with like Matt and Jeff Hardy, you know, she was like, she was their foil as opposed to like Spike Dudley with the Dudleys, and then you've got Rhino, Edge and Christian. The bumps that she took,
mate.
You know,
that gore that she got, that
unbelievable
fucking spear that she got from Rhino.
It was insane. But you know, like the bumps that she took, she was legitimately a badass. She like, you've got to put respect on her name, and I think that's why she's on my list. Again, she could be higher, she could be probably lower, but I think, for me, she was definitely going to be on my list at some point. So Lita for me is my number 8.
She probably does song sales than anybody in the history of the universe as well. So fair play to her for that.
Again, it's one of those ones that's like, she was, I can't think of like, I'm going to say alternative. Now, there obviously have been alternative female wrestlers in the past, but it was a different sort of alternative for Lita. You know, it was like I don't know what it was. There was just something about Lita that I like Lita.
She clicked. Yeah, she clicked.
Yeah.
She was over, man. She was big time over.
Big over, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. We're going to move swiftly on then, because I'm assuming she's going to be on your list somewhere because you haven't said anything, but that's fine. Okay, number 7 for me is Mickie James.
Ooh, okay.
Mickie James, 6-time WWE WWF champion, so 5 times WWE, 1 time Diva champion, 5 times TNA champion. Again, great worker in the ring. I think she's got psychology down to an art, and especially in the Knockouts division. I think her TNA run more recently, in the most recent years, has probably been better. She's really embracing the country and Western star. Obviously, she is a country and Western singer as well, released a few albums, etc. Her ability in ring's never in doubt. I think she complemented like Trish and Lita well. It was at that same time. I'll always remember her debut. Yeah, she debuted as Trish Stratus' biggest fan. And then, again, we think about long-term storyline. Then there was the turn. It was like the psychotic best friend of Trish Stratus. And then it just escalated. And then, you know, there's some memorable moments during that feud. You know, the licking of the hand, the, like, just shit that was, as a sort of teenage boy, you're like, yep, she's hot. Yep, I like her. Yep, definitely. So, yeah, Mickie James for me, I think... again, a lock for number 7 just from what she achieved. And again, it's not for the WWE and WWF, it wasn't a long period in terms of her being on top because of the stars that she was in there with, but to be like 6 times champ of the biggest company in the world and then move into the competition, becoming 5 times champ, you know, she's a star, man. It's like a run in TNA just now. It's similar to Gail Kim. Like she raises the bar. You know, I think she does raise the bar, and yeah, Mickie James, number 7.
Okay, like this is exactly the same situation that I had with Mae Young earlier on. She's not on my list. Mickie James isn't.
Okay.
She didn't make it on the sort of the big list.
Okay.
I always, for me, she's done some amazing stuff, but for me, she was never really. I don't know. I just never really clicked with her. I don't know.
Oh, really? All right. Okay. So it was just for you, just not.
Maybe for me, just a bit like she isn't meh, but for me, just a bit like meh. Okay.
Interesting.
I like. It doesn't surprise me that she's in the mix or in the talk, but number 7's very high. I'm very interested to see
really?
I'm very interested to see who's above her. Like you're telling me, Wendy Richter isn't on your list, and she is. That's very interesting to me. Very interesting. But, hey, like I'm 100,000,000% not going to fall out over Mickie James, mate. So we'll crack on and we'll move on. Like to me, she's just a bit vanilla, to be fair. But there we go. For me, okay. I get what she's done. Like fair play. Like I think she was probably better off in TNA than she was in WWE. I think she was lucky to be 6-time champion WWE. But
she was definitely a champion of circumstance, right? I think that's fair to say.
Entrance music as well. Very annoying. That's probably reasons why I don't fucking like her. It's just like that.
Okay. Moving on. Number 7 for Mr. Hawks.
We've just had a chat about her, mate, with you. It's number Lita for me.
Fair enough.
Like, just going back a little bit to what you were talking about with her debut and stuff. She started CMLL. She was trained in CMLL, Ricky Santana and Dory Funk Jr. helped train this girl. That says a lot.
Did he?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yep. And also, you missed out the ECW bit. She was in ECW for 6 months before she went to WWE. As, oh my God, her name is completely gone. I'm going to have to Google it.
Angelica.
There you go. I knew you'd help me out with that one. Just amazing. Like the tag team thing that she did with Becky, like last year as well, or this year, sometime recently, was really good fun as well, and massive innovator, really important. I think a lot of the girls now would cite her as like one of those people who either got them into wrestling or made them want to be a wrestler. So, like, that's really important. Like,
Yep.
she sort of put that out there for the world, people, and that alternative look that she had really, really opened up a lot of new fans to wrestling. And you've gone from like the sport women or whatever at that time, and all these swimsuit models, quote unquote, bikini girls or whatever, fitness models, and you get Lita. Obviously, she was in really good shape. She was beautiful, but she was different. She
Yep.
dressed different. She had that sort of alternative edge to her and stuff. And forget that was not meant as a pun at all. She had that alternative edge to her, like which really opened up a whole new fan base for women's wrestling. And I think that's really important. She was definitely a game changer, definitely. And Amy Dumas coming in and just being an absolute beast and a boss, and that spear from Rhino. She's a brave girl to be taking anything from Rhino, anything, and to take a
Yep.
spear like that at Mania. She's on my list, number 7, easy. Yep,
Easy.
can't add much to you, just a few little bits and bobs, mate. Yep, easy
Love
peasy.
it. Love it. Okay, so Lita, solid lock on both our lists, which is fantastic. Number 6 for you, Hoxie.
Number 6 for me is Bull Nakano.
Bull Nakano, yep.
Japanese wrestler Bull Nakano. AJW, All Japan wrestler for pretty much forever, really, until she got some kind of got forced out, kind of got worked out of AJW in the 90s. Went off to CMLL. She became the first ever women's CMLL champion. I always struggle with CMLL. Every time I say it, it's so bad. She's ever women's CMLL champion. When you go from sort of being that much of a badass in Japan, it's very, very easy to go somewhere and sort of not get found out, but get on from a great height. And to go to somewhere like Mexico and just instantly become the woman there, that's a big thing. And for them to sort of introduce a title for you or for the women, that's a huge thing. She had the feud in probably, or the main feud, that sort of most watched feud really, with Alundra Blaze.
Yep.
They had some unbelievable matches. It's pretty. I can remember like watching back like pay-per-views and stuff and main events or whatever, and all I can remember is seeing like Bull Nakano and Alundra Blaze in just a mixture of all these matches. There could be tags with other women, or like not main events, but like matches with them, just beating shit out of each other and doing mad, like doing suplex on each other and power bombs and like Northern Lights and like strikes and everything. I was like, this is what the hell? Like, even the guys are not doing this sort of stuff. Like, Bull Nakano was an absolute like a machine. She is a unit. Like, she had the look as well, like all the like the spiky hair, like that big massive spiky hair, and the lightning bolts like painted onto her face, and like her gear, and she was wearing like UFC, like MMA type like gloves and stuff. Like, she was an absolute badass. She looked sick. She kind of like heel wrestler from a woman that you would look and think, shit, like she could beat the fuck out of anyone. Like, she was a badass. She was one of my earlier memories of women's wrestling. Like, some of my first memories of women's wrestling is watching Bull Nakano and Alundra Blaze matches. She won the WWE title, WWF women's title at a big show in Tokyo. It was like the Golden Egg or something,
Big Egg,
like
yeah.
tournament, big show. She beat Alundra Blaze, and she had it for like 6 months or whatever it was. Like, they had a lot of faith in this woman, like to give her the title, especially beating Alundra, who was over a shit, and to have the championship for that long. Usually, what happens in shows abroad, like if they go to Japan or Mexico or something, they'll win the title and have it for a week, and they'll lose it before the title comes back to America or comes back to wherever. Like, for her to have it that long was a real big deal. She also was part of the WCW show in Korea, the one in Pyongyang that done 150,000 people. So she has to go down in history as that, like, to be the women's match on on that WCW show. Like she was everywhere. Japan, Mexico, America, like in really big important feuds, in title pictures, and really, really, really historic matches for the time. Bull Nakano has to be on there, and legitimately one of the best women's wrestlers in terms of like in-ring ability and just being an absolute badass. She was one of the first names on my list. Whenever anyone mentions to me women's wrestling, she's one of the first things that pops into my head. Just because I have like we talked a lot last week about that sort of impact that when you first started watching wrestling, those guys that were about. That like the Road Warriors for me is like watching it as a kid, thinking like this is amazing, like what the hell, like what some of my first memories of women's wrestling is Bull Nakano just looking like an absolute Barbie, thinking like who is this beast, like she's amazing, like absolutely unreal. So for that reason, she's definitely on my list, and I think she's amazing. And when she quit wrestling, she turned into a pro golfer, like which is just the most crazy like career change ever. But
that's crazy.
Yeah, like there's like a promo shot of her. I'm trying to get it up on Google now. I'd fit it in on the or something. There's a promo shot of her with like a big blonde hair and like a blue lipstick and blue face paint all cracked on her face, and like her gear looks amazing. Like she looks like an absolute badass. And I just think like for a wrestler, yeah, we'll stick that on the Twitter just because I'd like to look at it. Yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, there's a picture of her with a WWF title, just looking like an absolute beast. Yeah, it's a photo. So yeah, I not fanboying out with Bull Nakano, if that makes sense, but I just think she's amazing. When you Google her name, it's Bull Nakano, Japanese wrestler and golfer. It's just the most amazing thing ever. But yeah, she was around for a long time. She's done a lot in the business. So for me, 100% number 6. Not even straight in there.
So she's not on my list, right? And I'm going to explain why. Now, I know the name Bull Nakano, right? Obviously, I've done a bit of research. I know I like wrestling, so I know the names. But for me, it just I can't recall any of her matches, so that's why she's not on my list. She was in the wider list simply because I know that she was such a big deal in terms of female wrestling. And I think this is more of this is a my bad. I think potentially she could be on my list if I just took the time to actually watch like the feud with Blaze, etc. But yeah, she's not on my list. But again, like some of the stuff you were talking about there, I'm aware of. But I think just for consistency in terms of my list, that's why she's not on there. Because I don't remember her making a significant impact in sort of my wrestling history, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, mate. That makes perfect sense.
Okay, number 6 is Bull Nakano from Hoxie. Okay, so for my number 6, this is, I would say, probably one of the unsung heroes of wrestling. Not known as champion, not known as anything like that, but I'm going to go for Luna Vachon.
Hey.
Sorry?
I said, yeah, I was just, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like, he's amazing.
Total unsung hero.
I'll level with you really quick before you crack on. Sorry to cut you off. She didn't get on my list. She was the last name took off it. Go on, mate. You go on. Yeah.
No,
I feel
it's
bad
fine.
now.
No, not at all.
I didn't put her on.
Well, I feel bad about it. I didn't put Bull Nakano on. So yeah, that's
there we go. Equals
right.
himself
So
now.
Luna Vachon, the niece of Mad Dog Vachon and Vivian Vachon, she was trained by her Aunt Vivian and also the Fabulous Moolah. Again, it was two wrestling stalwarts in terms of the Vachon family and obviously Fabulous Moolah. It was a great start into the business. I don't think she was ever truly appreciated, but she was a proper bad bitch. Yeah, we talked about alternative with Lita, and it's a different sort of alternative, but Luna Vachon was a fucking badass.
Yes. Yeah, she was double hard.
She was double hard. And we'll get onto her ECW work in a wee second, but you know, she worked. You know, she worked WrestleManias. Mania 9 and Mania 10, she was in mixed tag team matches. She is probably best known for excelling as a manager. Yeah, she managed a few people throughout her tenure in the wrestling business. I mean, she married Gangrel. She managed and married Gangrel eventually, you know. But her ECW like sort of run is the one that sort of solidifies how much of a fucking badass she is. Just simply, she was manager to Tommy Dreamer during, especially the time during the Tommy Dreamer and Raven feud, like one of the probably the biggest feud in ECW, I would imagine, like in terms of longevity of it. The Dreamer Raven feud is up there, but she was just not afraid to get down and dirty, like with the boys. You know, she used to love interfering in matches. She used to throw hands with her male counterparts. She even had a cage match against Stevie Richards in 1995. I think it was ECW Heatwave. I think that was the name of the pay-per-view. I mean, she was...
I don't even think I've ever seen that. I might need to search. I don't even think I've ever seen that match. That's crazy. Sorry, go on.
No, yep. I think she got color in that match. Yeah, she was beaten up. I'm sure she got color. She eventually won the match. Yeah, and she won the match, and Mick Foley actually, he alludes to this later in the career. It's called the testicular claw, so you can only imagine how she won the match.
Amazing.
She then went obviously back to WWE or WBF at the time. She then tagged with Goldust at WrestleMania 14. She faced Mark Miro and Sable, who Sable was like. You said that Blaze, obviously, she was the peak. She was so over. Sable at that point, she was over because, and this sounds really bad, but the way she looked, you know, at that stage, she was fit. Brock, don't kill me. I mean, I respect your wife. You know, there was some heat between Vachon and Sable because Sable didn't know how to work. You know, she didn't have a clue what was going on, but Vachon, as ever, the professional, helped her through the match, got through it, it was absolutely fine. Interesting point, did you know that Luna Vachon, she was the first woman to appear in a wrestling video game?
Amazing. Love a fact. Would that have been WWF Attitude?
WWF Raw on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. There you go.
There we go. Knowledge is power, guys. Knowledge is power.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, every successful team has this sort of like backup player that takes a lot of the flack. They do a lot more than they probably should, you know, and they're asked to be great in every single thing that they do. And I think that she personified that. She was that sort of player. She, especially at a time when women's wrestling was sort of shat upon, you know, and this is the sort of stage we're talking about. She worked at it. She had the respect for the business. She was a wrestler.
She was a phenomenal worker. Phenomenal worker. Who she got trained by and what she could do.
Yep.
That's probably one of the main reasons what caused a lot of her sort of issues.
Yep.
With maybe the way to describe it is the fact that she probably knew that she was amazing and she was just in that time period. It's quite sad, really.
Yeah.
Quite sad. Yeah.
I mean, there's two words I can really think of, and we've mentioned it already, the word pioneer. I think she is a proper pioneer of women's wrestling, just simply because of the time she was in and the amount of effort that she put into it. But she brought a credibility to it as well. Like, she looked...
To women's wrestling. Yeah.
She looked scary as shit. She made children cry. You know, she used to
like do that thing when she'd like go next to the corner and just be like hiding behind it and be like, you know what I mean? Like, she was so like creepy, so creepy.
Yeah. So maybe not the biggest in terms of championship reigns, etc. But I think you've got to include her on any form of list just from the sort of impact that she had, especially as a manager as well. I think she was really effective as a manager. So yeah, Luna Vachon is my number 6.
Imagine if she came in 2015. Imagine if she burst onto the scene in 2015. Imagine what women's wrestling would look like right now.
Jeez, different class.
She'd be main event. She would have broke all this stuff. She would have broke all this stuff that we're probably going to be talking about at some point soon. She'd be the biggest of big deals.
Yep.
When women's wrestling is actually taken seriously, she was way ahead, 30 years ahead of the curve, and it's sad, really, really sad.
It is
But
very, very sad.
yeah, she's not on my list, mate. But like I said, she was nearly there, really nearly there, and I think it was just more for the fact that she hasn't done as much. She's done a lot, but
Yep.
not necessarily as much as maybe some of the other people on my list or whatever. But
That's fair.
She's so good, really, really
Again,
underrated. Bless her.
you can use the phrase like sort of legend, again, not because of championship reigns, but again just impact of women's wrestling. I think a legendary figure is Luna Vachon. So cool. So that's us done our number 6s, 10 to 6. Before we start on rank number 5, we now have our Royal Fumble.
Royal Fumble!
Yeah, folks, the Royal Fumble, where the business has had a major brain fart and something's happened that we either don't think should have happened, or there's something that's happened that we're just going to talk about as a bit of a shitstorm in the business. So, Hoxie, what is this week's Royal Fumble?
This week's Royal Fumble is what is commonly regarded as within wrestling as the quote unquote original screw job, which is the match that happened between two people who we've spoken about before. In the list is Wendy Richter and the Fabulous Moolah. This happened in 1984. Basically, it's Richter didn't want to lose. It was the brawl for end it all to end it all was the sort of the pay-per-view, if that makes sense. And it was the Fabulous Moolah against Wendy Richter, and it was a really, really big deal. One of those things where it's hard to explain that there's the sort of the backstory to it almost, because there's a lot to it. We could almost do another fucking a whole episode on this. But what was Fabulous Moolah's name? She didn't go in there as Moolah. She had a mask on, didn't she, and an outfit, and everybody knew it was her, but they gave her another name. Oh my god, Spider Lady.
Spider Lady.
So they went in there she went in there as the Spider Lady, and the referee was on it, and it was the whole match was specifically to take the title off Richter without her knowing. So the match sort of started, went through a little bit. Moolah got her in a small package. The ref counted, but Richter, she clearly kicked out of it before 3. And the ref was like, "Oh yeah, that's 3," and give the title to Moolah, and then she took the mask off and done what she needed to do, and that was it. Basically, Richter never went back. She just literally left. I think she was still wearing her gear when she buggered off.
Yeah, they said that she left her gear. Yeah,
she went home, and that was it. Basically, Moolah was WWF Women's title for a couple of years after that. It was such a I think there's two sort of sides to this. There's the Wendy Richter sort of got, maybe in some of people's minds, or maybe Vince's mind or whatever, she sort of got a little bit too big for her boots. Sort of wanted to rein Richter back in and sort of maybe keep her a little bit grounded. They didn't want her to sort of be the step over the crossover star. They probably maybe wanted that for Hogan rather than anybody else. I mean, because the rock and wrestling thing we talked about earlier on with Cyndi Lauper, that was huge for her. She was on like MTV and stuff, wasn't she? Doing like segments, and I'm sure the one of the matches that she had was actually on MTV. They showed it on MTV. It was such a big thing at the time, and I think, like I said, Wendy, they wanted to extend her contract, and there was this contract, and she refused to sign the extension, and all this sort of stuff. Like, she wanted more money, but then they didn't want to give it her. So it's very, very reminiscent of Brett in '97, where they he's got this agreement or he's got this opportunity. He signed for this 10-year deal, and Vince reneged on it and that sort of stuff. It's they needed a reason to get the belt off her. Like they didn't want to go into this mess with having Richter as the championship and risk her taking that belt with her to other places or onto television shows or onto films or whatever she was going to go and do. And they just squashed it very, very quickly. And yeah, the match with the Spider Lady was sort of very hastily put together and obviously very hastily finished as well. Like there's obviously the footage on there is on the network and on YouTube and stuff, so you can go and watch. So it's fascinating match. But yeah, it was the original Screwjob. It was a big thing. Like we discussed, didn't we, about sort of what this week's fumble, and we were sort of thinking about a few different things and maybe what we can do and what we can think about. And I think we've kept it quite on topic with the women's wrestling, if you know what I mean. And these, like I said, for me, both of these names have come up already in terms of really important. And I think this is in terms of women's wrestling, in terms of the history, sort of the annals of time, stories, and like I said, that the quote unquote the original Screwjob. A lot of people forget about it.
Yeah.
A lot of people won't have even heard about this. I would imagine there's a lot of wrestling fans who won't know about this, but it was at the time it was a huge thing. I would imagine at some point there'll be like a Dark Side of the Ring or something on it or something or whatever. But
yeah,
it's a really interesting story and it's very, very reminiscent to '97, and they've done it in a very similar way.
Isn't it ironic? Isn't it ironic the fact that they didn't want Richter to leave with the title to go to another company, and then several years later, Alundra Blaze does exactly that and dumps it in the trash. You know,
it's in the trash can.
Full circle, right?
Yeah, it's. I think it's not a screw job anyway. For a start, it's a double cross. It's exactly the same what happened in '97. It's a double cross, not a screw job. So we need to get those things sorted out. But when it comes to sorry to me being pedantic and a worker or whatever, but it was a double cross. But yeah, I just think it's a really interesting story that, like I said, often gets overlooked, and that just the Spider Lady rolling up the star and just, you know what I mean, getting a massive work off the ref, and it's not like when Sean had him in the oh my god, sharpshooter. And it's like the ref's like, oh yeah, he quit. It's like the ref is counting, and she clearly kicks out before the 3, and he's like, oh yeah, it was free. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous sight, but it's a very, very interesting, and it did. It obviously put a stop to that women's sort of regenerative sort of section of the mid '80s or whatever, with Wendy Richter turning into a superstar, and probably put women's wrestling back a very, very, very long time, very quickly. And I think for that, it's got to be a mess up. It's got to be it's got to be a fumble. It's got to be a fuck up.
I think, unfortunately for Richter, right? I think she was on a hide into nothing. You know, it's like, fair enough. You can argue, you can demand more money, and yeah, absolutely. During the Rock and Wrestling thing, she rightly was demanding more money, and you know, Vince being Vince, you know, at that time didn't want to pay her anything. So that's where the contract extension thing came from. But you know, the hide into nothing came from. Fabulous Moolah is well renowned for, you know, people talk about like the golden shovel in terms of Cena and Triple H and stuff. She was the originator of that golden shovel. You know, there's a reason why she was champion for 10,000 days plus. You know, it's because she didn't want to, and I think you're absolutely right. It did hold back women's wrestling for a long, long time, and you know, it's one of those ones. I think. It's one of these unique situations. Well, it's not even a unique situation. It's, you know, you can see blame in all three sides. Richter being obviously quite hard-headed in terms of she wants her money, she wants an extension, which again, argument's sake, you can say, yes, she deserved that.
She was the star. She was
the star.
Yeah,
absolutely.
She really was the star. Yeah.
Then you can see it from Vince McMahon being Vince McMahon, you know, in terms of just being him. And then you've got Moolah just being the originator of the golden shovel, like I say. So I think she was on a hide into nothing. I think she could have picked two worse adversaries, and I don't think she could get any worse than that if she picked out of everybody in the world. I think she was she was screwed regardless. Sorry, she was double crossed regardless.
Double cross.
But yeah, interesting one. To be fair, I forgot about the original screw job, but the original screw job. That's really difficult to say when you're filming at 10:30 at night. And you're Scottish, yeah, exactly. It's so I had to go back and read it again, sort of refresh my memory, and it's definitely on topic, and I think it's such a good royal fumble for this particular episode, Hoxie. So, well suggested, Mr. Hawks.
Yeah, no worries, mate. No worries.
So, ladies and gents, that is the royal fumble for this week. Again, if you have any suggestions of a fumble in the wrestling business you want to hear me and Hoxie talk about, email us in, wrestlemark10@gmail.com, tweet us at @mark_out of10, or comment on our YouTube channel as well. That would be greatly appreciated. But let's get back into the list of top 10 women in wrestling. And I believe it's my number 5, Hoxie. And my number 5 is someone we've already mentioned. It is Gail Kim.
Amazing.
I mean, I'll go quickly through my notes. In my opinion, probably the most underappreciated WWE diva, in fact, WWE wrestler, period, of all time. Again, absolutely gorgeous, as we said before, and she's incredible in the ring. She could go like it. You know, you said that she won the WWE title or WWF title in her first match. In my opinion, it was shocking. She only got the one reign with it. You know, she was wasted in WWF, but her TNA runs are what made her. You're absolutely right. She was first ever TNA champ, women's champion, 7 times overall. And you touched upon it in terms of Awesome Kong as well. For me, I think that feud and that story is up there with one of the best in TNA history across not just the Divas or the Knockouts division, but across the entire of TNA in terms of the longevity of the storyline, the whole David and Goliath thing. It's like, is she going to beat Kong? Isn't she? You know, it was just incredible storytelling, and you know, Kong is. You know, Kong's not on my list, but you know, she could have been because she was such a unique talent as well. But Gail Kim was incredible in that feud. And then if you take a few steps further on, she's consistently putting over new talent right up until like today, to be honest. You know, it's like she came out of retirement because she did retire. She came out of retirement and she put over big time Tessa Blanchard before Tessa Blanchard went all sorts of wrong. You know,
she's always been all sorts of wrong.
well, yeah. I mean, she's a unique talent as well, but yeah, let's just not talk about Tessa. But yeah, she came out of retirement to do it. So again, that shows you the sort of the love and the sort of the way she wants to not protect the business, but project the business in terms of the women's division. Yeah, for me, love a bit of Gail Kim. She was a lock and malice from the get-go. And she, to be fair, she was up and down the list, and I think a 5, sort of middle of the pack, is a fair ranking for her. And tomorrow she could be higher. Yesterday she was probably a bit lower, but yeah, fucking incredible performer.
I obviously we had this discussion earlier on. I can't put her over enough. I really can't. I think she's amazing. The only reason she's not any higher on my list is because of other people. But it doesn't mean that she's low, if that makes sense. It's just in that mix. Yeah, she's amazing. She's so good. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and maybe watch one of her matches or something, especially ones with Awesome Kong. That, like I said earlier on paper, that should not have worked the way that it did. And at the time, Awesome Kong was not. I don't think she ever became very good. I think she only got over because of the way she looked. But I don't. She was very good at the time, and a lot of that was Gail.
Green. Yeah, she was.
She was as green as the grass. Yeah, and yeah, she was such a good brain, such a good mind.
That's the thing, though. Kong didn't need to do anything, right? Because she was, and again, I'm not putting her in the same level, but the analogy I'm going to make is the Andre of the Knockouts division in terms of big bastard. You know, doesn't need to do anything.
Could work.
I know that's what I mean. It's just the analogy. That's the sort of mentality. If you don't know who Awesome Kong is, go and look her up. And like I say, I think that particular feud, I think it's one that we should deep dive, watch the entirety of that feud. I think that'd be a really good watch as well, just from day dot to the end, basically. Okay, so that's my number 5, Gail Kim, both on both our lists. We haven't had many on the same list, which is quite interesting. It's only 1 or 2. But your number 5, Hoxie.
My number 5 is Alundra Blaze or Medusa.
Yeah.
Multi-time champion wherever she went. She changed the game for women's wrestling. I said earlier on when we talked about Lita, there's a lot of women in wrestling who are in wrestling because of Alundra Blaze.
Yeah.
All self, sort of admitted that and sort of come out and put her over big time every single opportunity they get. Obviously, I mentioned with Bull Nakano, like some of the feud she had. She had feud with Luna Vachon in WCW. Stuff with like Jackie and like wrestling in that mid-90s period. She was the first woman to win the WCW Cruiserweight title as well with all the guys. So there's a couple of women that did win it, but she was the first one to do it. The first ever Gaijin woman to go to All Japan. She was AWA, WWF, WCW, like All Japan. Like she wrestled everywhere. Everyone thinks Medusa was like this beautiful. She was like the first beautiful woman wrestler who came and with her blonde hair, and she looked really good. She had a good body, and this, that, and the other. Like she could go big time. She was so good. Like technically, she was sound. She was double hard. Her strikes were good. Like she'd throw motherfuckers all over the place. Like she was awesome. She was awesome. Obviously, she was Medusa before WWF and after WWF. Little fact for you, whether you know this or not, and for the listeners, do you know where Medusa comes from? Do you know where the name Medusa
Greek
comes
mythology, isn't it?
Not for her.
Oh, for her, right, okay.
It's a shortened version of Made in the USA. So it's Made in the
Really?
USA.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went for historical reference there. I'm just totally wrong.
She was a fucking monster truck driver and stuff as well. She's cool as fuck. Proper cool as fuck. She was so good. Like I said, an absolute, and this is no pun intended. She's a trailblazer. She really, really is. Yeah. She made a massive difference. She was what Wendy Richter was in the 80s before she got cut out beneath her. She made that into the 90s, and that's what propelled, I think, that sort of generation. Because she was gone from the WWF in that sort of mid-90s period, and with that Nitro when she took the belt, and like you mentioned it earlier on about dropping it in the bin. Like, what a fucking historic moment that is, by the way. Mm-hmm. If you look at that Monday Night War situation, and obviously it's really well documented. There's lots and lots of documentaries and shows and podcasts and all this, that, and the other about it. Like, that was a big deal. And Eric Bischoff has said like he was going to have her anyway, and apparently she said, "I've still got the belt," and he was like, "Bring it with you." So they don't necessarily know whose idea it was, because there's probably a lot of legislation that will come with that. That would come with. She got exiled for like, what was it, 20 years or whatever?
Yeah,
for doing that. She came back. She was doing stuff with the WWE. She's now agenting for the NWA Power stuff now.
Oh,
so
is she? Okay.
She's still keeping herself in the business. She was an agent in WWE until COVID, I think, and they booted everybody out. But she's still knocking about. She's still doing what she needs to do, and she's a legit legend. Like we talk about legends of. There's lots of legends in the men's wrestling. There's loads. There's people who are still going, who will be, or they won't be, or whatever. There's loads and loads and loads of people we can have this discussion about. When it comes to quote unquote like Mount Rushmore of women's wrestling, she is definitely going to be on one of the on the side of that mountain, I would imagine, because she's just that much of a big deal in that sort of what we class as popular wrestling. She's going to be there. She's definitely going to be there, and yeah, Blaze, 100%, number 5 for me.
Interesting.
Medusa, made in the USA.
That's a really cool factoid. I didn't know that. That's really cool. Cool. Number 5 for Hoxie is Alundra Blaze. Interesting. Okay, Hoxie, you're number 4.
So my number 4 is another Japanese wrestler, a lady called Manami Toyota. There's not many people that are going to know who Manami Toyota is, or have sort of heard of this lady. She's probably like one of, if not the best women's wrestlers ever. She is legit badass in every single way, shape, or form or fashion. We look at her historics. I mean, she debuted in 1987, so she debuted when I was born. Basically, I think it was August '87 as well. So she's probably been around the wrestling world for as long as I've been alive, which is quite a cool little fact. But got 10 5-star matches to her name. Now, we shit on Dave a lot here. Fuck Dave Meltzer. We were both in agreement with this. Yep. But when we look at sort of the history of wrestling, we have to kind of use that a little bit as a guide, really. I know it's an opinion, but it can either be taken whichever way you want it. You know what I mean? It's opinions matter or they don't.
Yeah.
But he is, when you look at the history of wrestling, the Wrestling Observer is kind of a constant and has been for a long time.
Yeah,
so that's what we have to go to and sort of what we have to use a lot of the time. For a women's wrestler to have, and I know it's Japan, and Dave loves Japan, but to have 5-star matches, like, that's insane. Absolutely insane. She's a badass. The Wrestling Observer Match of the Year in 1993 was a Manami Toyota match. So if you think about, just think about that for a second. So the Wrestling Observer Match of the Year in 1993 was a women's match. You think about the Match of the Year from 1993, you got to think about probably all the people that were in there or thereabouts who were wrestling at that time. You've got a tag match, basically, an all Japan women's tag match. You got Toyota, Yamada, Dynamite Kansai, and Mayumi Ozaki. To beat everybody, male, female, Japan, Mexico, America, whatever, WWF, WCW, or whatever. Like, she won Match of the Year. She's just nuts. She's an absolute badass. She's one of the OG suplex machines when it comes to pro wrestling. I follow a lot of wrestling sort of Twitter pages, pro wrestler pages, whatever you want to call them, and she gets more stuff on there than probably most of the guys do with her quote unquote moves and stuff. Like, I can't stress enough. Like, well, once again, this is all personal preference. Like, I can't stress enough to you how much of a big deal that this woman is. In Japan, she's like Jesus, you know, whatever, like a god. You know what I mean? She's literally an idolized in Japan. Badass. It's like you look at her, you think, oh, okay, like she's probably 5.5 foot tall, probably at most like 150 pounds. That's probably a worked weight. She's probably close to like 130 maybe. Like, she'd kick the head off anybody. Legit badass. She'd throw anybody about. Just an unreal wrestler. Submission work, fast, loads of like amazing. She was probably one of the first pioneers of what we would class now as, you know, we talk a lot about near falls and those false finishes. We talk about the kick outs at like 2 and 11, 12. Like, she was one of the first real proponents of those. A lot of the wrestling we see now, that hybrid style, comes from that Japanese style of the big and the near falls and the high spots and stuff. She was one of the main proponents for that in the sort of late 80s to early 90s.
Yep.
I want to cut myself short because I'll carry on putting her over. Like, she at 5.5 foot tall as well. She could jump from the ring to the top rope, like Shelton Benjamin jump, if you know what I mean.
Wow.
From standing straight onto the top rope. Just a badass. If there's any women wrestlers or any women wrestling fans or anyone out there who hasn't heard of this lady, go and seek her out. Just YouTube Manami Toyota best matches or best spots or best moves or whatever. Just go and search this lady. Legit one of the best to ever put on a pair of boots when it comes to women wrestling. She's fucking unbelievable. So for me, like she had to make it on here, and she was definitely higher up. She's not going to get to number 1 or 2 or 3, obviously. She's number 4, but she's a badass. Fucking unreal. So yeah, I'll stop banging on about her now. Go and seek her out. Like Shields, if you take something from this episode or whatever, just go and fucking Google her.
Yeah,
like,
I think I'm going to need to, because I'm going to hold my hands up here. I'm a wrestling fan, but my Japanese knowledge is severely lacking then. So yeah, Manami Toyota was never on my list because I didn't know about her, and that's more fine, me than her. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking up YouTube just now, just waiting to watch after this particular episode's finished recording. Interesting, Hoxie. That's not a chic moment, but it's definitely left field just simply because I don't know the name. Interesting. Love it. I love your wrestling knowledge, Hoxie. It is always.
Thank you, mate.
It's a joy to listen.
Like I said, I am, because I love this so much. I genuinely we had this conversation last week, didn't we? After we'd done the other episode, like I think doing this podcast has actually made me. I love wrestling. I've been a wrestler for a long time. I've been interested in it, or whatever. Doing this podcast has actually made me realize how much I do actually love wrestling, proper love. Like I am in love with wrestling. Like it's crazy.
It's so good.
And just to have like a few hours every week where I can sit down with my mate and just chat about stuff that I have a real passion for, and hopefully other people listening that will come across. Like that's really good. That's really nice, and I think it's I just enjoy it. Like you said earlier on, it's like a bit of a highlight of your week or whatever. For me, is exactly the same. I've got so much of this that I want to share with people, because there is people out there. Like there's stuff that I'll learn from you, mate. Definitely. Like last week, some of the facts you were coming out with last week, I've never heard before. It was amazing. But just I just want to just share my passion with people, and that's cool. That's cool.
I think I agree with you. I think wrestling is. Sorry, I've got a cat going around my ankles. Fuck off. Wrestling is. It was a big proponent of my life growing up as well. It's like. And I think just being able to, like you say, sit down with your mate and just sort of chew the cud a little bit. And I'm really enjoying this whole mark out of 10 experience. It's just, there's so much we can do with it. And I think, as you said, I think it was the first episode. We're here for a good time and a long time. I think we are going to, I think we've got something special, which is quite cool. And yeah, hopefully just other people appreciate what we're doing. And what I originally want to happen is, obviously it's me and you sitting together at night on our computers and stuff talking about wrestling. What I want to happen is having people listen to it and doing the same stuff, like talking to their mates. Oh, did you listen to Mark out of 10? Yeah, I did. What do you think? Who's on your list? I want that shit to happen. That's really cool for me.
Yeah.
And if I can walk away with saying, if you're obviously Manami Toyota, a name I've never heard before, if you say go and watch her match, I'm going to go and watch the match and see what happens. Cool. So, folks, what do you think? Number 4 for Hoxie, Manami Toyota. Interesting choice from our lovely Hoxie, our housewife's favourite heel. My number 4. Okay, I believe it's me, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Go for you, mate. Go
so my number 4 is Sensational Sherry Martel.
Amazing.
3-time AWA World Champion, 1-time WWF Champion, and Hall of Famer. Tough as old boots, and probably I'm going to set my stall out here. She was the best female manager in the history of wrestling, in my opinion. Again, we can talk about her world title. She actually defeated the Fabulous Moolah in WWF, so straight away she was jettisoned to like greatness just by beating one of the best of all times in terms of the Fabulous Moolah. But if we look at the managers, and like I say, its impact on the wrestling business, she managed some of the biggest names in wrestling history. She managed Macho Man Randy Savage, during one of the biggest feuds of Macho Man and Hulk Hogan. Yeah, one of the best bits of storytelling ever in terms of the full circle with Miss Elizabeth, going back to Macho Man after the Hogan match, etc. We go back to Martel. She managed Ted DiBiase. Famously, she managed Shawn Michaels singing his theme tune at the same time. You know, it's like she managed Ric Flair. She managed Harlem Heat. You know, it goes on and on and on. How much of an impact she had, and it's testament to how great she was in that role. All round legend, legitimate badass, a unique look for the time. She could go and deserving to be in the name of any woman of wrestling. And to be honest, I think, see, when you talk about managers in WWF, WWE, or in wrestling, she's got to be in the discussion as well, you know, in terms of, and if we take out the fact women, I think, again, I'll set my stall out, she is for me the best women's manager without a shadow of a doubt in terms of valleys, etc.
So what I'll probably do now, mate, just to like not speed things up, if you know what I mean, but just while we're on this conversation, she's my honourable mention.
Okay.
Sherry Martel is my honourable mention.
Yeah.
She didn't make it on this list because I see her, and I know this is wrong, but this is the way that I see her. I see her more as a valet/manager.
Fair dues.
But she was a wrestler, and she was legitimately a badass, and she was very good. And she's on my honorable mention list for every single reason that you've just said.
Yep.
Like, she is amazing. She was one of the boys. She got it. She was a worker. She was phenomenal. Her psychology was amazing. She's one of the best managers ever. Like, she's going to be on that list 100 million% for me, the same as you. She gets... We've put her over the last couple of minutes. I still think she's underrated by a lot of people, by the vast majority of people. She does not. What do the cool kids say now? All the elite guys want to wank over their flowers. Like, they doesn't get her flowers, if you know what I mean. Like, she doesn't get her flowers for what she did to the business. She was around at the boom period with all of the people who needed to, you know what I mean, who were a big deal. Like you say, you reel that list of people off who she valeted and managed with. Amazing. I love Sherry Martel. She's one of my favorite people in wrestling ever. She definitely couldn't make it on this list because I see her more, but she was 100%. She was the honorable mention without a shadow of a doubt. No one even came close for that. No one come close. Yeah, I love her. She's amazing. And I've talked about like initial memories of wrestling when I started watching it and people who were about and what they were doing or whatever. She was one of the first people that I seen and was just like, wow, like, she's amazing. Like, she's so cool. Like, what the hell? Like, she's this woman who's just horrible and evil, but she's so like beautiful and like, it's mad. Just a mind fuck. Like, proper mind fuck.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a few memorable things like with Sherry as well. Obviously, everything she did was impeccable, but there's two main ones that I always remember, and there's one of them I'm not going to be able to say the entire story because I think you'll guess what it is as soon as I mention who it is. But first one is when she came back and she did with Kurt Angle, and she sung "I'm Just a Sexy Kurt."
Sexy Kurt.
It's just that was so good. And then the other memorable one that does his round on YouTube every so often is the one with Harlem Heat, Booker T talking about Hulk Hogan, and he goes,
I've no idea what you're on about, mate. What are you on about?
The expletive N word, and she turns away, and you can tell she's popping in the background. It's just because you don't see her break. You don't see her break usually, and it's just she absolute legend, and it's an absolute fair point in terms of you see her more of as a valley or that's absolutely fair. But for me, it was a case of you're talking about women of wrestling. I think she had to be there, and the fact that she's on your list as honourable mention, I think it goes without saying, to be perfectly honest.
And she left us way too young.
100%.
Way. She was 49, mate, when she went, which is just ridiculous. She had way more to give in the wrestling world, I think. A lot more. So, yeah, it's just sad. Really sad.
Very sad. Yeah. Very, very sad indeed. Okay, so that was my number 4, Sensational Sherry, Sherry Martel. Moving on to my number 3, and it's someone we've already spoken about, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time. It's Fabulous Moolah. Reason she's so high is because of just that longevity, you know, in terms of, I think it sort of goes without saying. In hindsight, she probably should be a bit lower on the list. So yeah, I'm not going to waste everybody's time just reiterating it. I think she she dominated women's wrestling for essentially 4 decades. You know, she was women's wrestling for a large proponent of that. Unquestionably, probably the most influential and the most famous women's wrestler in history, in terms of if you think about the entire period of wrestling. As you say, we're not sort of digging them out here. She did control women's wrestling, and she's probably one of the major proponents as to why women's wrestling didn't evolve, because she kept a whole host of people down. But she's basically the first Hulk Hogan before Hulk Hogan was Hulk Hogan. But yeah,
popularized wrestling politics
exactly
single-handedly. Yeah.
But regardless of what you think here, she's got to go down as like one of the greatest. You know, 10,000 plus days. What was it? How many different reigns was it? 4 times NWA champs. Like, it's just just
everything and anything. She's done everything basically.
Exactly.
Absolutely everything in wrestling. Yeah.
Dominant.
Yeah.
That's a phrase that we haven't used probably yet on it. It's just dominant.
It's a good show.
So yeah.
Yep.
Cool. So so that's my number.
Great description.
My number 3 is the Fabulous Moolah. Over to you, Mr. Hawks. We're flying through it now.
Yep. So my number 3 is Trish Stratus. So we can't have a conversation about the greatest women wrestlers of all time without getting her in the conversation. She's high for me because of what she's done, or what she did, for what she had on the business. She's high on the list for what she like means to me in terms of like sort of memories that I have about wrestling and the business. But you can't deny what she's done. Like, she got there through she worked her socks off. She got a really good start because obviously she is just quite possibly one of the most beautiful women wrestlers of all time. It's not even close. Like, there is not a single teenage boy at any time in their life watching wrestling when she was there who probably didn't have a poster or was thinking about her at certain points in their day. You know what I mean? Like, she was a big deal for that, right?
SmackDown 2, Know Your Role, loading screen, say no more.
No idea what you're on, Shields. I have no idea what you're on about. She transcended wrestling. She's 7-time WWF Women's Champion. Yep. She started off with that TNA, like the Test and Albert things. Like, she was very sexualized as a performer when she started. Like, obviously the affair with Vince McMahon. Vince knows, he knows what he's doing, doesn't he, old Vinnie Mac? He's a lad. I loved she was involved in lots and lots of really good angles. And there's a really underrated one of her angles. There was a feud between Christian and Chris Jericho that she got involved in. She turned on Jericho, and Christian won the belt, and they done that kiss thing, and like that's really underrated feud and a really underrated angle and storyline. That was really good fun. I really like that one. That stands out for me in terms of like good stuff that they did. She got voted as Diva of the Decade. She was ranked by the WWE as the greatest women's superstar of all time. Like, which says a lot. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people there at the time when she was voted. It was recent. It wasn't like back then. In my opinion, and this will go down as one of the best moments or payoffs for an angle or whatever in wrestling history for me. That whole WrestleMania 17 with Linda. Keeping Linda drugged up, and they were having the affair. That, all she did was stand up out of a chair. Linda McMahon stood up out of a chair, and 80,000 people lost their fucking brains over it. Like, and she was a massive.
It, man.
Yeah, I watched that back. Like, WrestleMania 17 is probably my favorite pay-per-view ever. I don't want to give too much away for maybe an episode that we might do down the line. It's going to be up there, if not the one. Every single match on that is an absolute banger. But that always stands out to me as like a highlight of the show. That pop from her standing up, like, and she was a massive deal. She was a huge proponent of that whole storyline. Obviously, she came back and done the run recently. Really good fun. Like, she was she worked really hard at getting better in the ring as well, like actually being trying really hard to be a good worker. When she won the title, the last time she won the title before she sort of originally retired, like she won the title in that match and then retired it. I think it was like Unforgiven pay-per-view or something back in the mid 2000s. Like you can't have a conversation about women's wrestling without Trish. She's a big deal, huge. She sold pay-per-views, she sold merch, she was over, she looked good, she could work, she was a champ, like she was involved in storylines. Like you look at everything that she did in wrestling, and you got to think she was probably only there for maybe 5 or 6 years. She wasn't really around for a very, very long time.
Yeah, not as a wrestler. Yeah,
not as a wrestler. Yeah, exactly. I think maybe 2000 she debuted in 2000 maybe, but like I said, she was just WrestleMania matches, pay-per-view matches. Like I said, selling houses. People wanted to see her. Like she's a big deal, and everyone think, oh, Trish, she only got there because she was fit or whatever. Like she's beautiful, she's stunning. You can't deny that at all. But when she got to the dance, she worked really fucking hard to get to the top of the quote unquote mountain, and she did. And she's a big deal. She is a really big deal. And I said, like Alundra Blaze, you have the conversation about the Mount Rushmore of women's wrestling. For me, she has to have a conversation about being there, or she has to be on there for me. She's brilliant, really, really good. And I have really fond memories of her as well from like when I really, really got into wrestling, that sort of attitude era. She was coming towards that. I would have been 13, 14 at the time she came about. Prime age for a Trish Stratus to enter my life. So all the memories. Yeah, so big deal for me. Trish, number 3, easy.
Nice.
Easy.
Love it. Can't say any more than that, Hoxie. She's on my list. But you're number 2?
Okay, so number 2 for me is Charlotte Flair.
Okay.
Now, you're probably going to... I would imagine you're going to... because you mentioned something the other episode about only getting there because of her dad's name and all this, that, and the other. But I can agree and also disagree with that situation. So, she's a 14-time women's champion. To be a 14-time champion of anything is a big deal, and I'll reiterate what I said in the first episode. Like, you've got to lose it 15 times, all right? Like, I don't give a fuck. It's wrestling. Stop putting logic to an illogical situation. But 14-time champion in anything is a big deal. Okay.
Yeah.
She was the last ever Divas champ, which is a little fact that I found out doing my research on her, which I didn't know until I found that out, which is a really fun little fact. 6 times Raw champ, 7 times SmackDown champ, 1-time Diva, NXT champion twice, 1 times WWE Women's Champion, Triple Crown and Grand Slam, 2020 Royal Rumble winner.
Yep.
2016 Hell in a Cell was the first ever main event by a women's for a women's match, and she main evented WrestleMania 35 with Ronda and Becky. Like, when you look at those accolades written down on a piece of paper and you think about what she's done and been and all the matches and all the amazing feuds she's ever had, like the match at this year's WrestleMania with Rhea Ripley is one of the best. It was one of the best matches over those 2 nights. I think we and you were on probably agreement on that.
Yeah, 100%.
Like she literally. I know that we talk about the 4 horsewomen of wrestling or whatever that came through that sort of NXT brand or that at the time. She changed the game big time. She really did. And I think that's the whole reason now that we have women's wrestling as presented as serious as it is because of her. And I know she got that opportunity probably to get into the business because of her dad and of her dad's name, which is understandable. There's lots of guys who've done that in the past. But you've still got to be good enough to actually get there and be. If she was shit, she would not be main event in pay-per-view. She wouldn't be winning championships and stuff like that. Like, it wouldn't happen. So it's a really, really big deal. She's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal worker. She's had some of the best feuds, some of the most amazing matches. For me, she has to be towards the top. Yep. She just got pipped to number 1. Mostly for personal feelings rather than anything else. But like I said, you look at those look at those list of accolades that she has, and I know we don't always talk about the stats or whatever, but it has to come into it at some point.
Yep.
She's one of the best to ever do it. Her presentation is good, whether she's a face or a heel. She's good on the mic. She's got good charisma. She can work. She's a badass, absolute badass. I think she's phenomenal, and I think when all said and done, when we take away all the shit of, oh, she's a Flair or whatever, we take away the name and we look up 10, 20 years' time, she's going to be in the conversation of the GOAT, really. And yeah, for me, she's number 2 all day, every day.
Fair dues. Fair dues, Mr. Hawks. You've put your point across very, very well. Charlotte Flair is Hawks's number 2. Okay, so my number 2 is Trish Stratus.
Okay.
Yeah, my number 2 is Trish. Like you say, 7 times WWE champion, women's champion, Hall of Famer, WWE hardcore champion once as well.
Yes,
like you say,
I forgot that actually. Yep, sorry.
Voted the best diva of all time, and it is hard to argue with that if you think about it. Yeah, she started as the Valley, as you said, of Test and Albert, TNA, you know, the memorable storyline with Vince McMahon, and as you say, she worked her ass off to become one of the most solid stars in an era when women were just thought of as a piece of eye candy. You know, she worked her ass off. She originally retired on top. She retired on top. She defeated, it was Lita. She defeated at Unforgiven. You're absolutely right. She used the sharpshooter in Canada. You know, Canada's own move.
Over as shit.
You go. There you go. It's like she retired as the absolute best. She's came back recently, and I'm going to say that cage match that she had with Becky Lynch was one of the best cage matches I've seen. I think they pulled it out the bag. I thought they were brilliant. Just phenomenal. And as you say, beautiful woman. Absolutely gorgeous. She's like a fine wine. She gets better with age. She's
yeah.
I mean, and you know, Stratusfaction guaranteed, you know, and that...
It's such a good gimmick as well. The Stratusfaction thing is phenomenal. It's so good.
You know, it is. I mean, it's just fucking different class. So yeah, Trish is my number 2. Okay.
Brilliant.
Okay, so what we do now, guys, if for those that haven't heard Mark out of 10 before, we each have had a list of 10, but we always think there should be someone that's potentially going to get shifted in because of an impact they've had, and we call it our honourable mention. Hoxie, you've already said what your honourable mention is, Sherry Martel, which, again, a shout. I think my honourable mention is probably going to annoy you a little bit. I think just from what you said in the past. Maybe not, I don't know, I might have picked up.
It's not Randy Orton, is it?
I hear voices. No, it's not. My honourable mention is the 9th wonder of the world, China.
Fucking hell.
Right, okay, let me finish. Okay, a lot of people, okay, yourself included, think she's overrated, and to some extent, I will agree with you. Her in-ring work was not great. Jericho said that she was difficult to work with, but you can't take away the impact that she had as a woman in wrestling, right? You can't. I think, again, it's one of those ones, if you ask 100 people, name a women's wrestler, Chyna's going to be the first. If you ask my sister, like, she'll think of Chyna. You know, if you think of, you know, that's the sort of mental model. And I agree with you. I think her work is extremely overrated, okay? She was the only woman to compete in 2 men's Royal Rumble. Yeah, that in itself is a massive stat. She's won the WWF Intercontinental Championship twice. She was a 1-time WWF Women's Champion, and she was inducted into the Hall of Fame as a member of DX, one of the best stables. We discussed it in the tag teams as well. One of the best stables of all time. She didn't lose her WWF title. She vacated it. When she left in 2001, she beat Lita, and then she vacated the title. Now, obviously, she had her issues, like well-documented issues, and she sadly passed away. But, yeah, I mean, as I say, I think I couldn't put her on my top 10, but I felt that it was quite important just because of the impact she had in wrestling that she was put on the list. So that's why she's my honourable mention. Like I say, I'm assuming that you're not going to be happy with that, but hopefully you appreciate the justification.
It's all about the justification. T-shirt soon to be available, probably at some point very soon. Get involved. We'll put the merch out there at some point. But like, it's a tough one. Like she was dog shit in the ring. She was dog shit on the mic. She was hard to work with.
Yep.
She thought she wanted Stone Cold money. Yeah. She wanted a downside guarantee of $1 million a year, and she got talked up by guys. She had agents and all this, that, and the other, rooting her over to herself and sort of building her up. And she was never. Every single person who worked with her put her over. There was nothing. It's good. That's all it was. And I know that's like. Somebody messaged me the other week when they were talking about the overrated people, and they were like, "You fucking hate the big guys, don't you?" And I'm like, I it's not that I hate the big monsters or anything. It's not that. It's just I just don't. They only get away with it because of their size, and she was just that. Really, there wasn't much. All the sizzle. No steak. 99.9% sizzle, 0.1% steak for China. I didn't like her then. She had massive go away heat with me. The only thing that I enjoyed through her whole thing was the Mamacita, the Guerrero thing, just because I think it was a cool little sort of like storyline, but just ick. Yeah, not for me. I can see, I can understand like what you're saying. Like I get it. I totally get it. But just like she had such a bad end to her life and stuff, and it's really sad. That's really, really sad. Like I don't wish that upon anybody or whatever, and it's just a horrible thing, horrible situation. But just nah, not for me.
This will be, I think, the interesting one for the listeners. I reckon it'll be a 50-50 split. I think people will agree with what you're saying, but I think people will agree with what I'm saying as well in terms of the impact she had in overall. Not wrestling as a whole, but if we're talking about women of wrestling, I think, she was a larger-than-life athlete. She was, like you say, I think that's really, really important. I mean, if you think about your Wendy Richter in terms of the impact that she had, big, bold character in the 80s, I think the argument could be made that China had the same sort of impact in terms of the sort of character that she brought forward in that sort of time frame in wrestling. And I think that's why that's the reason why she's in my honourable mention.
Okay, like I get it, mate.
Yeah,
I do get it. Yeah, I do get it. Just for me, it's just a bit.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, before we reveal our number ones on the list, we will run down our top 10 to our honourable mentions. So I'll go first, Hoxie, right? My number 10 was the Glamazon Beth Phoenix. Number 9 was Mae Young. Number 8 was Lita. Number 7 was Mickie James. Number 6 was Luna Vachon. Number 5 was Gail Kim. Number 4 was Sensational Sherry or Sherry Martel. Number 3 was the Fabulous Moolah. Number 2 was Trish Stratus. My honourable mention was the 9th Wonder of the World, China. Hoxie?
Number 10, Wendy Richter. Number 9, Gail Kim. Looking back at that, I probably should have maybe put her a little bit higher, but however. Number 8, Fabulous Moolah. Number 7, Lita. 6, Bull Nakano. 5, Alundra Blaze, Medusa. Number 4, Manami Toyota. Number 3, Trish Stratus. And number 2, Charlotte Flair. And my honourable mention of Sherry Martel.
Interesting. So I believe who is it now? Is it you, me? I think it's you. Now I'm intrigued here. I don't know. I expected someone else as your number one. That's already been on your list, but your number one, Hoxie, of
who did you think was going to be my number one? Just quickly before I go,
I thought it was going to be Charlotte.
Okay, it was a toss up. It was a real. This was the hardest thing. This was the hardest thing to do for me was to split these two out of the whole list. Oh, just crashed my mic. Sorry. Out of the whole list was the hardest thing, and all I've gone for here is just like personal preference, and it's very close even on that as well. I just she just makes me feel more. Really, it's probably the easiest way to explain it. So my number one is Becky Lynch.
Wow.
Okay. So she's the man. Literally, she is the man. I think when we look at the women's revolution, for those people who probably shouldn't have made it, out of that bunch of people, she fought harder than probably anybody else to make it. She willed it into existence. She made everybody else want to will it into existence as well. She's one of the best to ever do it. Obviously, multi-time champion, winning championships at WrestleMania. Um, like won the Raw Women's Championship and the SmackDown Championship. In obviously she's the first women to hold both of those titles at the same time, and she won it at WrestleMania 35 in that event. Royal Rumble champion, like NXT, all that sort of stuff. Whatever, like you look at all the titles and that sort of stuff, but she got herself from this like weird character of like this steampunk gimmick that she got given that she was trying really hard just to sort of work around. She managed to turn that into the man. And she was massively over, rubbing shoulders with people like John Cena in like a pose, and obviously the man thing, the whole discussion with obviously Flair and like Stone Cold comparisons and just all this sort of stuff. Like she's amazing in the ring. She's phenomenal on the mic. Like the Irish thing comes across as amazing. She's stunning. Like she's just like absolutely unreal. She's had some of the best feuds, some of the best like women's matches. She out of all of those that crop of women's wrestlers who came out of that women's revolution situation, she was the one that they probably would have thought would never have done it, and she did. She smashed it, absolutely smashed it. She's got in that position as well where she changes that character, like she revitalizes herself when she needs to. She's gone through that sort of that 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 change, that like osmosis sort of when she had to, and she was at one point when she was that man gimmick in like 2018, 19 or whatever it was. She was the biggest thing. She was the biggest draw. She was the biggest thing in wrestling at one period of time. I just love her. I just think she's amazing. Like some of the looks that sort of when she come back after the injury, didn't she? And she came back with like all the mad sunglasses on and these crazy outfits and these unbelievable like ring gears and just looking like an absolute badass. Like I just think she's amazing. She's absolutely amazing. Like her accolades, her in ring work. When all said and done, when we look back at this wrestling situation in 10, 20, 30 years or whatever, she's going to be GOAT discussion again with Charlotte. The only reason she got there above Charlotte is because how she makes me feel. I just think she's brilliant. I just love her to bits. She's quality. Everything that I like in a wrestler, whether it's a man or a woman, whatever, in a pro wrestler, she's got all of it in abundance. And I just think she's badass. She's phenomenal. Love her to bits. She's class. Absolutely phenomenal.
I am a huge Becky Lynch fan. Huge, massive. And the reason why she's not on my list, she's not my number one.
Oh my God, she didn't even make it on.
No.
Holy shit, I didn't even realise that. It's like we had one each left.
So, yeah, I reckon, I totally agree with you. See 5, 10 years' time, Mount Rushmore conversation. Absolutely incredible. Like you say, the man gimmick is... That's her Stone Cold moment. That's her Ric Flair moment in terms, that's it. That's her. She's there. The image of the broken nose and her bleeding will be similar to Stone Cold with the
Crimson
not tapping out to the sharpshooter with the blood trickling down his face. That's the sort of level we're talking in terms of that Becky Lynch image. But again, I think this list for me is just a few years too early. I know, and you know I love Becky Lynch. Even like she is one of my favourites. But Wow. Okay. Yeah. Fair dues. I
But
can't. I can't
you've got
disagree
to
with you.
think as well. Like for me, she was out of like she's only
Yeah.
36, so
Yep.
she's out. She's only 36. She's the same age as me. Okay, she got a really bad head injury
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
in the day, and she stopped wrestling for like I think it was like 5 or 6 years. She was out of wrestling for
Yeah.
a long time, and she still made it. Like she trained by Devitt over in in Ireland by Finn Balor,
Yeah. Finn
Prince
Balor. Yeah.
Devitt, whichever way you want to put it. Like she shouldn't. I love an underdog story or whatever. That's not the point I'm trying to make. Like she should not have made it, and she
Yeah.
has. It just shows how good she is. Like just shows what kind of a
Six,
big deal she is, and
6 years
like
she was out of the business for.
6 years. There you go.
Mm.
Like she's so good. I cannot put Becky Lynch over enough. I really can't. Um, I just like I said, it was a toss up. This is the closest 1 and 2 that I've had, like on these lists that we've done so far. And I'll just reiterate again, like Becky's only there because of she
Makes you
just
feel.
makes me my soul happy, if that makes sense. Like she's just really good. So that's literally all it comes down to. It's
I
all
mean,
it comes down to.
my reaction of wow isn't because I disagree with you. It's just I wouldn't have imagined that you would put her above Charlotte just because I know how much
Mm.
of a Charlotte fan you are as well. So
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
got absolutely zero disagreement with you, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sort of annoyed at myself a
Big
little
time
bit.
Bex, mate.
I'm
Big
really
time
pissed off
Bex.
at myself that she's not on my list now. It's actually annoying me.
Big time Bex.
So my
Brilliant.
number one then, Hoxie,
Yep.
is regardless of what I've said in the past, it's Charlotte Flair.
Oh, okay.
There is
Okay.
no bigger star in the women's division than Charlotte Flair. Now,
Yep.
as I said, the overrated remark I made in the first, I think I actually edited it out. It was a sort of tongue in cheek moment to you. Like, I'm not a massive fan of her work in the past 12 to 18 months. Granted, she's not been there for a lot of it, but you know what I mean in terms of her work in the last 12 to 18 months. I'm not a massive fan of it. I think it's very samey is probably the wrong turn of phrase, but yeah, I just meh. But her talent is undeniable, man. She's a Flair, you know. It's like we put Flair
in the
over
blood,
the other
right?
week. You know, we put Flair over the other week. There, it's Flair is potentially one. Like you said last week, was it last week or the week before? Either 1 or 1A in terms of the greatest of all time, the greatest guy to ever do it. And Charlotte Flair is on track to surpass her dad as the greatest of all time. And that in itself is an unbelievable achievement, right?
Yep.
Again, like you say, Raw Women's Champion 6 times, the inaugural Raw Women's Champion, SmackDown Women's Champion 7 times, NXT Women's Champion twice, Divas, like you say, the last one, Tag Team Champion, 5th Women's Triple Crown, 4th Women's Grand Slam, Women's Royal Rumble Champion. It's mental. And this is all within a 10 or 11 year period. Right? That's like, it's like a decade of absolute dominance. The generation of her, Becky, like you said, Bayley, Sasha Banks, resulted in this boom of women's wrestling. Okay, the women's revolution that we talk about now. You know, and I don't think without Charlotte Flair, you would have a Rhea Ripley in WWE, or you wouldn't have a Britt Baker in AEW, who, as a caveat, she's not on the list. She's not on your list. Probably wasn't considered, but Britt Baker is potentially one of the best women's wrestlers just now. Like, what she's doing in AEW is incredible, you know. So yeah, I think even though I'm not a huge fan of her at the moment, she's got to be number one. I don't think anybody can touch her, and I think the longer she goes on, I think the Mount Rushmore talk, it's not about 4 heads of Mount Rushmore, it's 3, because Charlotte's a lock as number one. That's what it's got to be, in my opinion. So yeah, Charlotte Flair is my number one.
She's got to be on there. Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. Like I said, and I'll reiterate. This was the closest I've caught. I don't know which way to put this one. I mean, I don't know one or two. I don't know what to do. It's probably about a week basically that I've been thinking about this, and I literally a little peek behind the curtain, even for you. I finished my list off probably about 2 hours ago, hour and a half. Well, before we started, if you know what I mean, before we started recording,
Yep.
I was on my phone, like going back and forth and looking at different things, and obviously made notes today and the last couple, just bits and bobs. And I was just like, okay, I'm just going to go with it. I'm just going to lock it in. And yeah, like I probably might look at this list in a week's time and think, oh, do you know what? No,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just Becky makes me feel it's so close. It's so close. You joked about the 1 and 1A thing. It's probably 1 and 1A. It's probably not 1 and 2. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, like I get it, mate. Yeah, just Becky, just big time Bex and the man thing and the whole, yeah, just shouldn't have done what she did. For me, it's just tipped her over the edge. But yeah, I can't argue at all. It's so close, and just anytime they get in the ring with anybody, it's obviously amazing. Anytime they get in the ring together, it's amazing as well. Like they had that thing, didn't they, on Raw when she dropped the belt on the floor and like pushed it into like that was like some proper like okay, like that's they will always be together through their career, I think. And when you look back, if there was ever like I don't know, like a rivals WWE rivals thing for either of these two, it's going to be them against each other probably. So,
but all the greats do. You know, it's like you've got, you know, Becky and Charlotte. Then you go through time. Kane and Undertaker, Rock and Stone Cold. You know,
Shawn and Brett,
exactly. Like Hulk, Ultimate Warrior, Hulk, Macho Man. You know, it's Hulk, Andre. It's, you know, I think Charlotte for me is the best. Becky is in with a shout as well. Like say tomorrow she could be on my list. It's one of those ones. I'm really annoyed she's not on my list. I'm actually pissed. I'm pissed at myself.
I didn't realise until we got here. I was like, holy shit, she isn't on there until I dropped it and you said, I was like, fuck yeah, she's not on there. That's crazy.
I mean, I've left out big names. I've left out Alundra Blaze. She wasn't on my list, you know, and this has actually been really difficult for. We were talking offline and saying, you know, is this going to be a good episode? But it's been a good episode simply because
this is a sleep episode. Shields, 100%. That's what they call it in the podcast world. They call it a sleeper episode where you think, oh, I ain't going to listen to that. It's going to be shit or whatever. This is definitely a sleeper episode, 100%. I'll be honest, I didn't think I would have as much I've had doing this as I've done the recent ones, but I genuinely think this is probably one of my favourite ones that I've done so far. Out of the 4 that we've done. Yeah.
I mean,
it took me by surprise. I'm not shitting on it. Yeah. Oh, mate, there's loads of stuff that have come off. Like we've mentioned Sasha. Like Toni Storm for me is like phenomenal. She was one that I had to sort of drop off, and like the Rhea Ripley was there. Aja Kong, Victoria. Just oh my god, like I love Victoria anyway. Just regardless, but like Aja Kong was there. Like loads. Mildred Burke, for fuck's sake, like pretty much the start of it. She's probably the fabulous kangaroos moment of this episode. It could have been, but like I had to get Sherry Martel on there. But like just so many good people who I was thinking about. It's been good fun. This has, mate.
Good Definitely episode.
Really good fun. Yeah.
And you know, to celebrate our getting into episode 4, 60% of the podcasts that have made it, we didn't have a chic moment this week. There was no chic moment. So, you know, that's testament to the quality of women in wrestling.
Yep.
So there we have it, folks. That is our top 10 of women in wrestling. Let us know what you think of these lists. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let us know your list as well. There have been people that have been doing that on our YouTube. As ever, you can email us at wrestlemark10@gmail.com. Tweet us at mark_out of10. Or like I say, you can leave us a comment on our YouTube channel. Remember to like the podcast, rate us 5 stars, and remember to share this podcast with one of your friends. Spread the love, as I said earlier on.
Just one person. If you're listening on Spotify, there's the little thing. All you've got to do is press the little dots, and it'll share, and it'll say WhatsApp or Facebook or whatever. It's 3 clicks to share this with somebody. If you're on YouTube, exactly the same thing. If you're listening on your phone or whatever, there's the share button. It's right there. You can see it right now. You can see it. Tell you what we'll do.
Push it.
We'll do this together. Should we do this together, John?
Yep.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Spotify on my mobile phone device now. So lots of people are probably going to be listening to this on their mobile phone. And I'm going to click on the Market Podcast, and I'm going to click on the little three dots, and I'm going to click share. And I'm just going to send it to a random person on my WhatsApp list. I'm going to send it to my mate, Bradders, over in Japan. So we're going to send it. He's listening in Osaka, Japan. So there you go. He's got it now. So we listen to it. He's a big wrestling fan. There we go. Done. How long did that take? I was talking through it as well.
Yeah,
5-10 seconds. See, it's that easy, guys. It's that easy, folks. One
Easy as
person, and then that one person tells their mate, and then their mates tell their mate. Before you know it, everyone knows about Mark out of 10, or Moo 10, as it is.
Moo 10.
Really called between the guys.
Wait for
Moo 10, guys.
Hashtag Moo 10. And as ever, guys, we're going to reveal next week's episode, which is going to be the top 10 pay-per-views in wrestling. So not just WWE, not just AEW, but best top 10 pay-per-views. That's going to be a good one. It could be an interesting conversation here, Oxy.
I am massively excited about that. Hugely excited. Because I love not a deep dive. We're not going to call it a deep dive because we're not going to do it for 4 hours or whatever. But I've got a feeling that we could get right in the nitty gritty with stuff and some stories and some good happenings and some good angles. I'm very excited. We'll do pay-per-views next week. I can't wait.
It's going to be good. So from me, thank you. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Shields. Have a very nice evening.
And wherever you listen in the world, what time it is, have a great morning, afternoon, evening. Have an amazing week, and we will definitely catch you on the next one. Cheers, guys.